on this episode of DL Weekly, a Disneyland icon is retiring after 55 years of service. Major changes are coming to the resort. We have the details.
More details on the Coco and Avatar experiences coming to DCA. Celebrate Soulfully is back. More 70th decorations have appeared. We talk about our D23 events that we experienced and more. DL Weekly starts now.
Greetings aboard the DL Weekly Orbiter. For your safety, intergalactic regulations require that you remain seated with your seatbelt fastened, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the podcast. And please, watch your children. To make Tag and Teresa fly higher, pull back on the control lever in front of you. To descend, just push the control lever forward. Thank you. Please enjoy your spaceflight.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of DL Weekly for the week of June 11th, 2025. I'm Teresa Urban.
And I'm Tag Bushman. We would like to thank everyone who supports the show. This week, we would like to give a special shout out to Heather G., Eric C., Michael V., and Kimberly S. for supporting the show. If you would like to help support the show and get ad-free versions of each episode, access to our supporter-only Discord chat, bonus episodes that we put out, and a bunch of other stuff, head on over to dlweekly.net/support and become an official weekly tier.
Now let's get to the news.
Extra, extra! Read all about it! DL Weekly reports from intrepid correspondents Tag and Teresa. You heard it here first, ladies and gents. Breaking news!
A Disneyland icon is retiring after 55 years with the Walt Disney Company. Kim Irvine will be passing the torch to the next generation of Imagineers to guide Disneyland. Over her time at the company, Kim worked on the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, Sleeping Beauty Castle, Project Stardust, and more recently, the refurbishment of the Jungle Cruise and the Adventureland Treehouse.
I was shocked to see this. Because at one of the, you'll hear about in our discussion topic.
You'll hear later.
Kim was at one of the things that we attended last week.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Yes, the first time that we've got to be at an event with Kim
in the
there.
same room.
Mm-hmm. It was super
in the room
exciting.
Where it happened. Anyway,
yes.
So I was very surprised to see this bit of news that she is retiring. But I was even more surprised when I was looking up her information and I was like, how long has she been with the company? 55 years.
Yeah. She deserves some time to relax and enjoy the resort instead of working at the resort. But yeah, Kim has been kind of in charge of the Disneyland resort. And so that's why she is a very special Imagineer for us, because she kind of tries to make sure to keep the spirit of Disneyland alive. So she's very intentional in all the projects that she does because she understands how special of a place Disneyland was. Of course, Kim has deep roots with Disneyland, her mother being Leota Toombs, who was an Imagineer, and her father was Dick Irvine, who also worked for the resort, was an Imagineer. Leota Toombs, if you know her for one thing, she is the face of Madame Leota in the classic Haunted Mansion, and it's her voice as you exit saying, "Hurry back." And she did, all sorts of stuff in the original. And then Kim got to kind of reprise her mother's role, and during the holiday overlay, it's Kim's face that is Madame Leota for Haunted Mansion Holiday.
Yeah. I don't think it can be overstated how much of an impact she's had on Disneyland and how much she has kind of embodied the spirit of Walt's original intentions, if anybody could do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's been really great that she's done all this stuff. It'll be interesting to see what ends up happening going forward. Yeah. Who takes the mantle?
Who steps in,
and steps in.
I have very high hopes, because if you've ever heard Kim either in a Disney Plus special or a behind the scenes type video, an interview, she talks about how she was brought up and learned from her senior Imagineers, the people that had, she learned from the people that built Disneyland, and how important that transfer of knowledge and sharing of knowledge was. So she is very intentional with the people she works with to really be a mentor and a guide to really help them understand the impact and the legacy that is working at the Disneyland Resort and making changes to the Disneyland Resort. Of course, we would like it to be, frozen in time, but that's just not how it works. Changes need to happen. So it's very important you do those changes well. A great example would be Small World. She was very much a part of the transition of Small World when they introduced all of the Disney characters a few years ago. And again, they did that in such a really beautiful way that if you didn't know that those characters weren't always part of the ride, you wouldn't know because they just blend in seamlessly. Case in point, we were talking about the new scene with Miguel and Dante. That if you, again, didn't know that hadn't been there, it just blends in so well that it doesn't feel like it's new or out of place.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of changes at the resorts, last Thursday, Disneyland President Thomas Maslam gave a State of the Resort presentation and unveiled some major upcoming changes. The first of these was concept art for a new entrance experience for guests on the harbor side of the resort. This includes a new transportation hub and major esplanade changes. A new guest bridge will take guests from a new parking structure behind the hotels on Harbor Boulevard to the entrance to the parks. There will still be a security checkpoint on harbor for guests staying at these hotels. The transportation hub will move from between the parks, where it is now, to the new parking area along with the security checkpoint. Construction on a new 6,000 space parking structure, rideshare and shuttle zones, and everything else is set to begin in the fall of 2026.
This is so crazy and so cool, and this is definitely like the first big thing that we're seeing from the Disneyland Forward project. This is very, very important, and this needs to be the first step, because once they transition and get this parking transportation hub shifted, they then can take what was the old surface lot. So we're looking at like the Toy Story lot, and then also even just like some of the bus drop-off zones here, and they can transition that space or that land into something else. So this is a very important first step. I don't know why, like, it's just parking and transportation and this like cool sky bridge, but this is one of, so there were 3 announcements. This is one of the, I don't know if this was number 1 or number 2, probably number 1 thing that I'm most excited about, just because this is the first time we've really seen concept art for it, and it looks gorgeous. I love the new Disneyland Resort sign that's coming. The poor Disneyland Resort, I feel, has been very underrepresented with what the signage is prior to it's not like Walt Disney World where you have like this grand arch and like it's like you really know that you've entered it, whereas Disneyland, you blink and you missed where the sign was because it's just kind of this little like, oh hey, you're here. So I love that they're going back to the old like marquee and the old classic Disneyland with the boxes style sign that was like the original sign. I love that it's coming back. I love the architecture that they're showing off here. It looks very like modern, but also like mid-century modern-esque, so similar to what we're seeing at the far end of the downtown Disney area that they just refreshed. It looks wonderful.
It does look wonderful. I am in agreement with you. I think that the new Disneyland marquee sign looks fantastic. It's definitely a standout. It definitely is of that same kind of architectural style that the new security gates by the hotels is. That's kind of what it looks like. So it's definitely going to unify that. Now, as you're listening to the podcast, you may or may not have seen the concept art, but basically the concept art is looking at what is now the main entrance to Disneyland from the harbor side, with the monorail in the foreground and then the return monorail kind of in the background of this space. Everything kind of takes place between those. There's a bridge that comes over from harbor. Now, for those of you who are somewhat familiar with this, we talked about this like when we started the podcast, around the first couple of years.
Yeah.
That there was going to be the Eastern Gateway project, and this is kind of the fruition of that.
The 2.0.
Yeah, it never got done. I actually think this is probably going to be better than whatever they had planned. But if you're walking down Harbor, there is a blank spot, which you can notice at night especially, because they have like this weird like blue-black light kind of thing going on.
Yeah, it's like a purple light.
That is where the bridge will connect with the other side of Harbor and go over to the parking structures. Now, there's going to be a huge parking structure that's built on the backside of all these Harbor hotels that are there. That will also be where the buses drop off, where your ride share, which, thank goodness, because the rideshare situation has been terrible for everybody involved.
Yeah.
I think rideshare people are upset about it. I think the drivers are upset because that was never... The spot where they have that now was never supposed to be that.
Right.
It was supposed to be, I think, like handicap drop-off or something like that, where it'd be close. The other part of this that's interesting that you can kind of see in the concept art, which we'll get to in our next news story, is DCA is kind of creeping in on the transit plaza space here. So that'll be interesting. I do like that they have this nice ramp. A concern that I have is if you come in on the other side of the resort at Pixar Pals and Mickey and Friends, you get a nice tram that takes you in pretty close to the entrance.
Yeah.
Where, from what we can tell from the concept art, there's not really a tram. It's just you're going to be walking a lot into that side. This does address one of the things that the local harbor hotels had a problem with, which before it was just the bridge over. There was no surface access.
Which I understand because us being folks that stay over on the harbor side of hotels, it would have added to our walk to the resort to like have to go back around to the hub and then get up and over the bridge versus just walk down the street, go in. So I'm glad that they kept that there's still street access as well as this nice pedestrian bridge.
Yeah. There's some other things that it's hard to tell from a concept art if this is intentional or not. If you kind of look back towards where the Esplanade is, I don't see any ticket booths. That doesn't necessarily mean there won't be ticket booths.
Do you know what I
really
see there?
What?
Trees.
Well, yeah, there's trees.
I know, but they could have gotten rid of them.
That's
didn't.
True.
Keep the
I also
trees.
don't see the actual entrance gates to Disneyland. So again, like they're obviously
or the train station.
Yeah, the train station, if you look, is actually here in the trees. If you kind of look closely,
Okay, I'll believe you.
But anyway, so who knows? Concept art doesn't always match what ends up being built. But if they're even close to this, I think it's going to be really cool.
Okay, you want to talk concept art?
Sure.
Look at Space Mountain.
Well, that's a whole different. Yeah.
No, but just look at what Tomorrowland looks like right now. That is not what Tomorrowland, yes, has buildings, but that looks like way more.
I mean, maybe, look, there's no Orbitron.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff here that's a little weird. But also here, so if you look, like, you can kind of, that's in there somewhere.
I think that's wishful thinking, but maybe. I believe you.
but see, look, there's no, like, I don't know, it's done very straight.
I have a confession to make. Tag quickly pointed out that I was wrong. I got so excited because...
You didn't have to say this.
I'm confessing. I got really excited because I thought we were getting an additional monorail because I saw the monorail at the bottom of the concept art, and when I first looked at it, it looked like that monorail was going straight. So like it would be zipping you back into the heart or like, you know, further into DCA, and then Tag's like, no, that's the existing track. And I looked, I'm like, oh, shoot. It is curving, isn't it?
Yep.
Because right now, the monorail, when you leave Disneyland, curves and goes kind of like somewhat on the front side of DCA. I'm not going to really say it's in DCA because there isn't a stop, but it kind of zips through the front side there. I got so excited because we were talking about that last trip. It'd be so nice if there was some sort of transportation from Disneyland to DCA that could kind of zip you from like the heart of each of the parks. So like if for example, if the monorail could have a stop, I don't know, on Pixar Pier somewhere or something like that. That would be so nice, so helpful. Because there was a couple of times that we'd be at the back of one of the parks and have an idea of something. We're like, oh gosh, that's literally the furthest we could possibly be from the other thing. We'll do that tomorrow kind of stuff. So we'll see.
I will also say that I thought, I'm looking, again, it's concept art. I've kind of zoomed in a little bit to look at this. I thought that the security gates were under this like oval here, but now that I'm looking, there's a canopy, so I don't know what that necessarily is.
I don't know, but you know what that is, Tag? That is a permanent looking security structure.
Yes, all of this is permanent looking, which is automatically an upgrade over anything else.
I also need to give Tag some credit because while we were walking to and from through this entrance corridor this last time, we were commenting on how aged everything was and how they really needed to do some patchwork on the pavement and how things just kind of were looking very run down and how that wasn't very Disney. And Tag's like, I think this is intentional. I think that there's something else that's going to happen. And then boom, we get this beautiful concept.
You don't want to spend money to maintain something you're going to tear out in the next year or two.
The other thing that's tough about that too is how would you be able to resurface that and not that's such a main artery for guests to get into the resort. But
I mean, they did that to the front end of DCA and they just worked people around. I mean, they'd figured it out. But the other thing too is like this is what I said about when they did Din Tai Fung and all of that, where the initial Disneyland Forward concept art showed that like that would be like part of a park. Yeah. I'm like, they're not building all this new stuff to tear it down. So like that concept art is like void now because like it's obviously going to be something different.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on to the other exciting part.
There's lots of exciting stuff. 2 other projects over in Disney California Adventure get some more firm details. The, quote, Avatar experience, which we will decipher later, will displace Monsters, Inc., Mike and Sully to the Rescue, which will close in early 2026. No further details on the experience, construction timeline, or anything else for this area was announced. Some good news, the Coco-themed attraction did get more fun details. The attraction will be located near Paradise Gardens Park and Pixar Pier in a current backstage area. Construction begins this fall.
So this is interesting. There's been so many people online that have taken satellite views, which you know me, I love satellite views.
Yeah.
And they have highlighted, like trying to like put things places and be like, well, this is going to happen here and this is going to happen there. And some people I think are just literally out of their minds because I'm looking at
reading
stuff.
The Disney tea leaves.
Well, I'm looking at some of the stuff that they're doing and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like that's definitely not going to happen. However, let's talk about Coco first, because Coco we have the most details
It's the good news, too.
It's the good news. So if I pull up, I'm going to pull up maps here. I'm going to share it to our people that we're streaming with here. I want to show you something that I had not realized in that corner of the park. So it's going to go supposedly between Boardwalk Pizza and Pasta and like the Inside Out Marshall Whirlwind.
I'm still
area.
very curious about this.
Well, here's something I did not realize. So this road here is a cast road. They actually have some stuff just parked along here.
Sure.
Nobody drives along this. They could absorb all of this space here to be an attraction. Now, the other thing is if you look at the concept art, you could see the Incredicoaster there. So you know it's going to be next to the Incredicoaster somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, some people have put it like way back here, which, I mean, maybe. But my other thought is this is the parade warehouse and this is the parade gates.
Yeah.
I don't think they can
How do you do
obstruct
that? Yeah, how do you do that? Exactly.
So I think that the entrance to the attraction is going to be in this space here. And it's going to be kind of like Ratatouille, where it's going to take you back, and then the attraction, I think, will take up this kind of back corner and leave the... Because Fresh Baked and others have said that the parade warehouse is going away. I don't think that's the case.
I don't know how that would happen.
Because where are you going to put it on the other side?
Yeah.
The other side is where they're doing Avengers Campus expansion and stuff. There's no room. So there's a ton of room with this access road.
Because what is those parking lots there?
That's
that
gonna
is
be the
all.
new stuff.
That's all absorbed by Avengers Campus now.
Yeah. So I think right now, I think they park stuff just kind of back here somewhere.
Well, and it's just there temporary because it's parked overnight at
in the warehouse.
In the warehouse.
But see, I think
Interesting.
this is a lot of space that's not being utilized. And when they build Disneyland Forward, supposedly, this section of this like little Mickey that you can see from from whatever, I think will be absorbed into whatever they're going to do. So I think that it's going to take up this kind of space.
Interesting.
Here.
Yeah.
Because
or maybe that's all going to
do?
be part of the attraction. Maybe the attraction just is like, you go way out. It could be a long,
That's
skinny,
true.
wonky looking show building.
Somebody thought
show
that
buildings don't need to be perfect squares and rectangles.
Boardwalk Pizza and Pasta was going to go away. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, it's not that busy, I guess.
Yeah,
but then
maybe
they still have to get you through. I don't know. I don't know what it is. That's just
curious.
my tea leaves. The concept art looks great. I'm excited for it. We need more kids rides. A boat ride, high capacity, wonderful. Love it.
The thing that looks really cool about this too is if you, again, reading the concept art tea leaves, the entrance to this attraction isn't your typical entrance to an attraction. It's like a facade in front of what looks like an open air plaza. And so I'm curious. I'm curious about that because it looks like it's more of not just an attraction and also like a Coco themed area, if that makes sense. I don't think they're going to be getting rid of anything. Maybe Boardwalk Pizza and Pasta. I don't think they'll be getting rid of Paradise Garden Grill. Maybe they'll retheme it and rename it to something else. But yeah, I'm super curious about this whole thought process. Again, maybe we're totally wrong and it's going to be different, but yeah,
What if they put a new gate here, and this concept art of this thing is literally like right here,
Maybe.
and then like you kind of queue up, and then like you said, maybe the boat comes up and grabs you and takes you back here.
But they haven't said anything about Emotional Whirlwind. Supposedly is staying. They haven't said anything about that.
That's
going.
because that's really difficult to work under.
Yeah,
the
but I guess I'm not sure how you'd get from the current on stage stuff to off stage. But then how does the parade
you move the parade gate like here, and you put the Coco thing here. You just move the gate back. So this becomes part of the parade route.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Kind of.
That's on stage. Because this would all be on stage then.
Got it. Okay, I get
Yeah,
you.
but I've seen some, like I said, I've seen some weird, like, you could talk about it for a second. I'm going to pull up this other one, and I was like, that is not what's happening.
Oh, I don't, nobody knows what's going on, so I don't really.
Yeah, but I think there's some that are like, some of these things are more likely than others, if you will.
I didn't think that they were going to put Avatar in Hollywoodland, but I was apparently much too wrong about that, because that's exactly what they're doing. We have learned that the Avatar experience will be taking over part of Hollywoodland, which is key part. So Hollywoodland is kind of, it's like the little Hollywood backlot corner, which Monsters Inc. is at. But then it's also, like, what else is Hollywoodland? Probably the Animation Academy, probably the Hyperion Theater. They haven't said exactly what the footprint's going to be. We know for sure that Monsters Inc., Mike and Sully to the Rescue has its days numbered, which the last thing DCA needs is less attractions. Yep. I love that we're getting 2 additional attractions for Avengers Campus, and we're adding the Coco attraction. But the thing that's really difficult here is you're taking away one of the all-age friendly attractions in DCA, which they're lacking right now. So we're trading, really. We're getting the Coco attraction, but we're losing the Monsters Inc. attraction. So I just don't, I'm not okay with this. If Avatar needed to come to California, I was really hoping that they were going to put it in one of the expansion pads so that it would be like not taking up existing space, because I'm really having a hard time too visually thinking about walking down Hollywood Boulevard to see the Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout Tower, which already is kind of does not blend in well with the 1920s aesthetic.
Yeah.
And now we're going to have it. So it's a T intersection that ends with the Guardians of the Galaxy Tower, and then I can't imagine that there won't be any exterior theming for Pandora.
Yeah.
But I'm curious.
This area includes that I think is good. So they've got that giant stage. I don't remember the stage numbers, but there was the Avengers store. Mm-hmm. That hasn't really been used for anything, so that's not a loss. There's this other thing that used to be,
but they could put other things in these.
There used to be a food court in here, but they use it for like special events now. That's going away. Of course, you got Monsters Inc. You've got whatever this like service building is out here.
But they could have done stuff.
It's going to absorb, supposedly, if you look at the concept art from the entrance plaza, it's going to absorb this tram drop-off. So
it's where the Disney buses do their pickup and drop-offs now.
So, I mean, that's a lot of space you could do back there. I mean, if you like zoom out and like, okay, so that's like a pretty big chunk. I mean, that's like half a Galaxy's Edge, really. So that's a decent amount of space. My concern, there's lots of concerns. Okay, first of all, Avatar. They haven't said attraction or land. Yeah, they just said experience, which some people brought up some interesting things about, that maybe it would be something completely indoors, that it would be like an indoor experience. Like everything you see in that concept art is an indoor thing, which I think is a little strange. You're going to have the monorail still going that way. How are you going to deal with the monorail being in Pandora? Like, that's a strange thing.
Yeah.
So I'm just not sure. I do think, I'm not going to miss Monsters, Inc. because, honestly, I think Lightning Lane kind of ruined it as an attraction anyway, because it's always a long line, even for... Although, when we went recently, do the Buddy Pass there, because that you can kind of bypass the longer line there. They'll fill you in third rows.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know what the Buddy Pass is, the Buddy Pass is kind of, I guess, Monsters, Inc.'s version of single rider. So you and one other person, so it can be 2 adults or like an adult and a child, can get a buddy pass. When you can ask if they're doing buddy passes. Actually, this last time we went, they noticed that we were a duo, and they proactively offered us a buddy pass. And a buddy pass, you get to then enter through the exit, and you wait and you fill in the third row. So whenever there's a family of 4, and then instead of having an empty row, and they don't have a family of 2 right behind the family of 4, then you get to sit in that last row, which some people might think, oh, I don't want the last row. I'd like to be in the first row so I can see everything. With how those ride vehicles are created, you're sitting higher in the back row, so you don't have you don't feel like you're missing out on things or like you can't see because people are sitting in front of you. So it's still a very enjoyable experience. It will definitely cut your wait time down.
Yeah.
Plus, the other nice thing too is you're still standing in a queue, albeit it's a line, not really a queue at that point, and you're standing indoors. So instead of standing out in the sun, because a lot of Monsters the extended queue is outdoors, you get to stand inside instead. So it's a nice little extra thing that they're doing. But yeah, that's called the Buddy Pass if you're interested. Get your Buddy Passes in now before they are scared away in 2026.
I've seen people online say they've talked to cast members, or I mean, who knows what cast members know, but it sounds like, and I tend to believe it, that the Hyperion and the...
Oh, what are you about to say?
And the Fill Magic are not going anywhere.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to go the other way. I'm
no,
that poor Hyperion. Leave it alone. We need to leave the Hyperion Theater alone, and we need to leave the Animation Academy building alone. I'm going to be like, in Disneyland, I'm chaining myself to trees. In DCA, I'm chaining myself to those buildings.
I think they've done enough updates to the Animation Academy recently and stuff that they're putting money into it, obviously. So, so we'll see. I don't know. We don't really have any details about Pandora other than it's coming.
The thing that I find interesting too is each time they've released concept art for the Pandora experience, it's not cohesive.
No.
Because at one point there was it looked like a boat ride type thing. And then at another point it looked like it was kind of a walk-through experience. And that might just be, this is the land area versus this is inside the attraction thought processes. But it's making me think and feel like the Avengers e-ticket ride, where every time they give us more information, we get a little bit more confused about what it's actually going to be.
Yes. All right. Well, June is Black Music Month, which means the return of an annual celebration. Celebrate Soulfully runs now through the end of June. The event will feature specialty food, character meet and greets, and performances around the resort. Now, if you think this just happened, that's because they did it for Black History Month in February, and now they're bringing it back for the music.
For music. This sounds so cool. So you get to, in Disneyland, of course, you can meet Tiana. She'll be in New Orleans Square or in the Royal Hall. But the cool thing, too, is there's going to be new music. So we've got Main Street USA will have window installations highlighting banjo masters in the early 20th century, honoring artists of the time and the banjo's African roots align with contemporary Black roots rediscovery movement. And there's going to be all sorts of music that you get to listen to over at Tiana's Palace on that new little stage area there. So looks like they've got the CFLC All-Star Brass Band, which will be playing June 1st, 7th, 8th, 28th, and 29th. June 14th and 15th is Got Rhythm. And June 21st and 22nd is CFLC Zydeco Court. Oh, Vern would be all about that. Zydeco is such... Okay, so... Right, this is a Disney podcast. So Zydeco is the going down the bayou music that Ray and all the Fireflies sing, like that, fun, upbeat, bouncy. It's such you can't help but tap your feet and have a smile to your face with Zydeco. Anyways.
Wikipedia says it blends African and Caribbean rhythms, blues, and rhythm and blues with music indigenous to the Louisiana Creoles, such as La and Jure? Anyway.
There was a Zydeco band that we learned about, and we then, so we were listening to it all the time, and then a couple years later, we're in New Orleans, and we were, on Bourbon Street, listening, trying to find, where's their Zydeco? Because it's just such fun. It's such, again, just happy, fun music. So I highly recommend going June 21st and 22nd to check that out. But the show times each day will be 1, 2:30, 3:30, and 4:30. Again, be sure to check your Disneyland app for the most updated entertainment schedule. But these will be over at Tiana's Palace and the new, Magnolia Gardens Park area now. So fun.
The Golden Horseshoe has an exhibit coming back, the Black Music at the Turn of the 20th Century, that's going to be there through July 11th. At Refreshment Corner, there's going to be a pianist playing rollicking tunes courtesy of the King of Ragtime, so even more music.
So celebrating Scott Joplin.
Yeah, and then at Royal Street Veranda, there's going to be a buffalo chicken beignet slider. That sounds interesting. And a red velvet cake at Cafe Orleans. What do we got over at California Adventure? One of these things we actually saw when we were there.
The buffalo chicken slider, I need to take a moment.
Sure.
This has been, people have been saying all sorts of good things about this on social media, that it might be surprising because it's a buffalo chicken, like a piece of buffalo chicken topped with coleslaw, and instead of a bun, it's nestled between two beignets and dusted with powdered sugar. And so it's kind of one of those like, ooh, maybe that sounds like a lot, but apparently very, very delicious.
That sounds interesting.
It sounds interesting.
You know,
sweet, savor, and spicy all together.
If this takes off, I can see them doing other versions of
more
this.
beignet sandwiches.
Yeah.
Well, over in Disney California Adventure Park, Disney legend Lanny Smoot is being celebrated. You can go discover some of his inventions. Of course, he's a Walt Disney Imagineer and special effects master who was recently inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. But if you're in Hollywoodland, you can take a moment. Across the street from the animation building and across from Smoothies, so it's like the corner right before you walk into the Hollywood backlot, there's this nice big window display, and it's honoring and celebrating Lanny, and it's got some of his most beloved Disney inventions along with some new ones.
Yeah, which is super cool. It was a neat display because before this was a Floyd Norman display, so this is really great that we have that. There's also, of course, Black Panther and the Dora Milaje and Captain America in Avengers Campus. There's the Five and Dime on Buena Vista Street. And then there's the Celebrate Soulfully, the Fundamentals, which are fundamental genres that comprise Black music history. That's going to be at the Paradise Garden Bandstand. And just check the link in our show notes. There's a ton of different
There's 9 different performers and performing groups that are going to be part of that. So, again, check the app for all of the entertainment schedules. Downtown Disney, you can go check out more entertainment, of course, at the Downtown Disney live stage. Daily performances at 12, 1, 2, and 3 p.m. And then there's also nighttime performances, too. Again, tons and tons. There are 20 different performers and groups coming to the Downtown Disney stage.
And if that's not enough, at Disney's Grand Californian Hotel and Spa, there's
buckets.
Also going to be 9 different performers throughout the month that will be there with a bunch of different genres for that. And then at the Disneyland Hotel,
6 different performers.
My goodness.
Tons. I love it. Let's get more. I love entertainment. We need more of it. This is amazing.
If
this
you
is
like
really
live
awesome.
entertainment, this is a great time to be at the parks.
Yes, it is. And the thing that's super cool about this is you don't have to have a park ticket to be able to go and enjoy this. A lot of it's happening in non-ticketed areas, the hotels, as well as the Downtown Disney live stage. I'm telling you, if I was a local, I would be down here all the time, soaking up all this incredible
you'd
talent.
be down there for a lot of reasons, but this is a good one.
One of the many reasons I would be down there. So cool. Well, while we were in the parks, we were able to get a sneak peek over the scrim to see the updates on the exterior portion of the Tiki Room. It appears that Tangaroa has been installed, and the other Tiki gods are also being refreshed. The flowers and tikis that fall from Tangaroa look to be higher up than before, but it was hard to say for sure, peeking over the construction walls and through the scrims.
So the reason that I thought that was I saw some photos, or maybe it was David from Fresh Baked, had some video of the old Tangaroa, and I was watching where the top of Tangaroa's head matched to this beam on the building, and the new one looks the same, but I could, you can't tell. So I don't know if these are going to be hard, but it does look great. They have obviously installed these new things. So at the very least, I assume that they're going to just be working again, which they weren't.
Yeah, or maybe not falling down as far because they were coming down very far that if you weren't paying attention, you might get bonked on the head by a tiki god.
Yeah, I'm just happy this effect might be working.
I do think it looks higher to me too. And again, it's one of those things that you're like, has it out, like as you're standing there looking, because we were being weirdos standing out in the middle of that very congested, busy intersection that is entrance of Adventureland, and we're like sitting there pondering, is that higher? does it look like the tree's bigger? Like,
It's really hard.
it's hard. It's hard to say. But it looks, what it does look is it looks nice and fresh and beautiful. I'm very excited. I'm hoping that this will be back in action next time we're at the park so we can go experience the refreshed Tiki Room.
Fingers crossed. The Walt Disney Archives does some amazing work, which you can see in the parks for the 70th. Inside of Carthay Circle Restaurant, there's a new Celebrating 70 Years of Disneyland Resort with the Walt Disney Archives exhibit. It features a ticket book, a Sam the Eagle top hat from America Sings, and a Disneyland survey marker, and more. Certainly worth checking out if you're in the parks, because it's just kind of cool.
Well, and why not? It's something that's included with your admission. You don't have to be eating or getting a beverage at Carthay Circle to just kind of poke in and take a peek at these things. If you're an Adventures from Inner Space person, they have an Atomobile model that was used in Adventures Through Inner Space there. There's a full ticket book. Again, the props that Tag had mentioned as well. It's just a nice little kind of nod to Disneyland's history to celebrate the 70th anniversary.
And the Archives always does such a great job with these types of things. So make sure you go in and take a look because, you know, if people don't look at this stuff, they may not do it all the time. So definitely do it.
We had talked previously of some of the missing decorations from the 70th concept art for Sleeping Beauty Castle. Well, they were just a little late for the start of the celebration. The toppers to the banners on the drawbridge have been installed. They feature 2 horns attached to the 70th medallion and swirling magic leading up to the light on top.
Yeah, so I pointed this out, I think, one of the last couple episodes, that I was like, this is missing. And you're like, oh, yeah, no, that's missing. And voila, here it is. Disney came through. It just took a little bit of time. So that makes me really happy.
You know what's interesting or funny? You had to run back to the hotel for something. So I hung back at the park and did a little, I don't know, mini photo shoot while I was waiting for Tag and did some pictures at the castle. I was re-looking at those just the other day. I'm ashamed to even be telling everyone and like admitting to this. The horns were there when we were there.
Were they?
They were. They're in the background of my castle photo pass photos. So they popped up at some point while we were there, but that was like the last day that those photos were taken. So I don't know when exactly they appeared magically while we were at the resort, but yeah.
You know, it's a tragedy that I'm looking through our photos and I'm like, I didn't take a lot of Sleeping Beauty castle pictures.
I did, but I took ones like from the side, so maybe you can't necessarily. There's my side photos. So like, it's not, I didn't take any straight on ones.
They were not there.
Look at that, they were not there, but the photo pass photographer ones, they're there.
So sometime between May 29th and June 2nd. Was that the last day? Was that when you were taking those?
June 3rd was our last day.
Okay, so sometime in those 4 days, they appeared.
They appeared.
So, but I'm just excited that they were there.
Yes.
Well, Disney giveth and Disney taketh away. The fountains in the moat in front of Sleeping Beauty Castle appear to have been removed.
According to Mice Chat.
The fountains were installed for the Disney 100 celebration and were expected to stay after, but they're either gone now or they just aren't turned on anymore.
I'm not fully convinced.
This doesn't look like they were a circular thing. I think these are just
I don't know. I'm not fully convinced. I'm holding out hope that they're still there. They were not turned on when we were there. That water's awfully murky, but that photo, there's stuff still in the photo. So I am going to hold out hope. I could be very, very wrong. But I'm still trying to hold out hope for this.
Can we just ask, what the heck
Why not?
is up with Disneyland and fountains?
I love them.
And water features. Like the waterfall back by Big Thunder was off working again. This is not there. Like, what is, is it that difficult to get water to go?
I don't know. Maybe that was the final straw for Kim Irvine. She said, you know what? You taking the fountains from the moat? I'm out of here. No, I'm just kidding.
Or she announced retirement. They're like, let's take the fountains out.
They're gorgeous. I don't know why. They would remove them. So that's the I'm having a hard time believing it's real. I didn't notice that they weren't there. If that makes sense. I noticed obviously that they weren't on and running.
Yeah.
But I didn't. You can see them. If you're standing on the moat, you can look down and you could make out the mechanics or the whatever you want to call it. And I didn't notice it not there, if that makes sense. And to me, like, maybe it is still there. I don't know. It's probably just Teresa being, wishful thinking and hopeful, and I'm just in denial. But I hope maybe they need to fix something and they'll come back.
It was a really cool connecting. I mean, they got rid of the geese already. You can at least have the fountains.
They looked gorgeous. Well, on to some other news. I'm not going to say better news or anything like that, because the main location of the Earl of Sandwich has a closing date. And I'm saying the main location as in, like, the La Brea Bakery location. So as of July 25th, it marks the end of Earl in the former La Brea Bakery location, leaving the temporary pop-up location by the old ESPN Zone building. The final location for Earl of Sandwich near the D-Lander shop is still under construction.
The thing I'm most excited for after I had to write this was for whatever they put in the ESPN Zone building, so we could stop calling it the old ESPN Zone building. But I don't know. We knew that this had to come at some point. And, Portos has got to move in there at some point. It's been years now. It'll be years before the building's done. So, it had to happen. I just hope that the Earl of Sandwich building that's actively under construction is just sped up a little bit.
You're right. That was not this most recent. That was 2022's D23 that announcement came that Portos was coming.
Yep.
Wow. And we got a little snack box. That saved us because we did not have time to eat between panels.
Imagine if you were a crazy Portos fan and you've been like waiting with bated breath.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's crazy.
We have to get the snacks for Tag and Teresa and James and Bern. Oh, and Cinderella. Time for SnackChat.
Well, on to fun other food themed things. This week for SnackChat, we have a new foodie guide. That's right. We have the Pride Night foodie guide to tempt everyone. Okay. So if you don't already have tickets to Pride Night, this might be a great reason to go.
I just want to say that normally it upsets me when they use the gray stuff and they do something with it different, because just let the gray stuff be the gray stuff. It's like leave Britney alone. Leave the gray stuff alone. But my goodness, this rainbow version, it just looks really good. Like, I want to eat it right now.
I'm stuck on the Cafe Orleans menu, which is available the 16th and the 17th for the Pride Night events. There is a blue cheese steak sandwich, buffalo wings with carrot and celery slaw, a green goddess salad, honey mustard chicken strips, a Monte Cristo pizza.
That's what this is.
Yeah. Nacho fries, and this is the one that really I'm like stuck on. Creme brulee with black cherry compote and ube ice cream.
Is ube like the flavor of the time right now?
Yeah, that and pineapple.
Well, I know how you are about drinks. At Carnation
gorgeous.
Cafe, they have a white wine sangria, which has a Fess Parker Riesling. So Fess Parker, if you don't remember, is Davy Crockett.
Oh,
the actor.
There you go. There you go.
There's also, at the Galactic Grill, there's chicken sliders and a peach and watermelon slushie.
Yum.
Which this looks like, from the photo, okay, this is not what it is, just to be clear. This is just what it looks like to me. It looks almost like not a margarita. What is it called where you put all the like random veggies?
Bloody Mary?
Bloody Mary, thank you. But it's a peach and watermelon layered slushie garnished with a watermelon wedge and mint. I would try this. It's not alcoholic.
There's also over at Gibson Girl a cereal milk cold brew. What is cereal milk, you may ask? Like I did. Well, it looks like it's like Fruity Pebbles. So it's cereal flavored cold brew topped with vanilla foam and fruit flavored cereal. I'm super curious about this. I can't imagine that the cereal flavored cold brew portion is like fruity cereal flavored, but maybe it is. I like the little cereal toppers. We were commenting on this last trip. I need to update everybody because I was really bad. I got through all but 3 cold brews, everybody. I was pretty proud of myself. One of them, there was 11. One of them was a choice because somebody in line said it was really not good. And then the other 2, I don't remember why. One of them was at Aunt Cass Cafe, and we were only in DCA one day, so I did 3 cold brews at DCA, not all 4. And then the last one...
Not at the same time either, guys. It was spread out.
Yeah, it was spread out. And the last one was the Black Calf Slushy, which I'm thinking will still be there. And I decided, you know what, that's a good one to leave for July, a slushy cold brew. But anyways, we were talking about how Disney is enjoying putting cereal, like decorating cold brews with cereal, because we've got, of course, the Black Calf, which has the little chocolate cocoa puff things on top.
I would argue that is the most popular cold brew in the entire resort.
Is. Yeah, it is. And then there was a honey cold brew that that I tried at Hungry Bear, and it had like the little honeycomb cereal things on top of it. And now we've got Fruity Pebble topped cold brews as well.
At the Hungry Bear Barbecue Jamboree, there's a pulled mushroom and jackfruit loaded fries, along with a sticky ribs and mac salad, a Sundae funnel cake fries, and a berry lemonade. I
was so... Okay, I know that this was not made for me. I was so excited for a pulled jackfruit loaded fries, but the mushroom, I wouldn't be able to do that. But jackfruit, like Vern had pulled jackfruit for something, and really, really enjoyed it. So now I've been wanting to try it. But these sticky ribs and the mac salad, ooh, that looks good. Moving along, oh my gosh. Okay.
This is the one I was talking about.
The Jolly Holiday Bakery Cafe. They have a Golden Girls cheesecake.
Which is awesome.
How fabulous is that? It's just a New York style cheesecake topped with chantilly cream and a chocolate decoration piece that, of course, says the Golden Girls on it. How stinking cute. There's also a pepperoni croissant with tomato soup. Which
looks really good.
It does. This looks like they need to keep this on the menu.
The only problem with this, it's hard to tell scale, because I'm thinking, okay, so
it doesn't look very big.
If this bowl is the size of the bowl that comes with the Jolly Holiday combo, that's a pretty okay size. But I'm looking at these, like the sesame seeds, and I'm like, oh, it's kind of small. But anyway, it's because they have so many things you got to try in one evening.
Exactly. It's like the snack size.
At the Little Red Wagon, they have a wagon-style corn dog, which you might say, what does that mean? Well, it's a hand-dipped corn dog topped with cheese spread and grilled onions and peppers served with a choice of cuties or potato chip. That's interesting.
That is interesting. Over at the Mint Julep Bar, this also is interesting. Candy-flavored heart-shaped beignets with Skittles popped, original freeze-dried candies, and a citrus glaze drizzle. They're very cute.
Yeah.
But I'm curious flavor-wise.
The next thing is an item that I think that they should have permanently at the Plaza Inn, which is the chicken parmesan, which has an oven-based chicken parmesan with blush pasta sauce and mozzarella cheese on chef's choice of pasta, topped with parmesan crouton crumbs and served with a garlic seasoned breadstick. And the thing that Teresa was gasping at was the specialty cream soda, which is a rock melon cream soda.
Oh, it looks so delicious and so refreshing. Over at Edelweiss Snacks and Maurice's Treats, you can get a spicy bratwurst cheesy pretzel. So, of course, it's the infamous cheesy pretzel garlic bread with as the bun for a spicy garlic or spicy bratwurst. And then, Rancho has chicken mole nachos. Look at these things.
Red Rose Tavern has a pizza fries, which sounds like it could be interesting. And rainbow stuff, which is what I was talking about earlier. It's rainbow strawberry and raspberry mousse, lemon cake, and fresh raspberries on a shortbread cookie.
Ooh, that sounds really good.
Here's some salad.
Over at Riverbell Terrace, there's an heirloom tomato and watermelon salad. There's a meatloaf melt, which features impossible beef, pork belly burnt ends cheese fries, say that 5 times fast, a short rib mac sandwich, spicy chicken sliders, key lime pudding, and red berry sangria slushy. You got to go to both of the Pride nights to be able to enjoy even half of the menu offerings.
It's a shame. At Royal Street Veranda, they have a gluten and wheat allergy-friendly beignet bites,
awesome.
which is a pair of gluten and wheat allergy-friendly beignets drizzled with honey and dusted with powdered sugar. And they also have a chocolate chip cookie ice cream sandwich, which is also gluten and wheat allergy-friendly. That's awesome.
That's really awesome. Over at the Stage Door Cafe, there is a rainbow cereal funnel cake. It is just that. It's funnel cake topped with rainbow cereal and also flavored with rainbow cereal, aka Fruity Pebbles.
They love Fruity Pebbles because at the churros near Big Thunder Mountain and near Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters, there's a rainbow cereal churro, which is a classic churro rolled in rainbow colored cereal, and a rainbow cereal dipping sauce, which has rainbow cereal flavored cream cheese icing.
Over at the churros near Casey Junior Circus Train, you can just get an OG churro there, but you can also get cajita caramel dipping sauce to go along with it. Tag was very excited about this. The churros at the Small World Promenade chicken and churro. Popcorn, chicken, churro, and maple syrup. Vern would be all about this.
They have to bring this back.
He loved that savory churro. This is a savory and sweet churro.
They have to bring it back. They have to have this back sometime. At the Popcorn near Haunted Mansion, they have a citrus popcorn, which is mixed with Skittles popped original freeze-dried candy and citrus glazed drizzle. There's also a rainbow cereal dipping sauce that you can get at the Pretzels near Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And Pretzels near Small World Promenade is the Cajita caramel dipping sauce again.
Did you see this? The Pretzels near Star Tours. There is an animal cookie pretzel. So, you know, like the pink frosting dipped animal cookies? It's that, but a pretzel. It's a cream cheese filled pretzel dipped in pink colored white chocolate and marshmallow flavored icing, garnished with rainbow sprinkles. This is so fun. This is, I don't know why, but not something I was expecting at all.
No, but now that you mentioned, I didn't understand what it was at first.
Yeah, but like those little animal cookies
that
yeah.
have the, okay, I get it now. And then there's a menu to celebrate all month. So these are items that you can get around the resort that are not just for Pride Night. There's some things like a rainbow Linzer cookie, which I think they've had before. Mm-hmm. We actually tried the rainbow layer cake at Plaza Inn.
Yes, I was a little grumpy about that because I wanted the 70th cake, but we went too early, and so they'd switched over their cake offering. So right now you cannot get the special cake for the 70th, cake. The celebration cake for the 70th at Plaza Inn. They only have the rainbow layer cake, which is beautiful and also delicious. So we'll just have to get, we're very fortunate that we're going to be able to attend and go to Disneyland a couple of times throughout the celebration. So we just have to wait to try the celebration cake at a later date.
And finally, there is, at the Disneyland Hotel, there's assorted macarons, 3-pack at the coffee house. And at the Craftsman Grill, there's a Pride Crisp Rice Treat and a Pride Donut.
Ooh. The Hearthstone Lounge has an elderflower gin fizz as well as a kettle watermelon cocktail. And then if novelties are your thing, does Disney have you covered? We've got a Pride bottle topper, a Pride Mickey Mouse hands bucket. So
we saw that one.
It's like Mickey Mouse is making a heart, and then inside of the heart hands is a rainbow. Like the heart is rainbow. It's very, very cute. And actually, you can put your hands in it. I saw people that were doing that. I didn't realize that. One of the people I was
standing in line with for the popcorn that day was saying, you put your hands in it. I'm like, yeah, that's okay.
There's also a Pride stainless steel tumbler, a Pride castle tumbler. And yeah, that about wraps it up for our foodie guide. Isn't that incredible that that's just an after hours event? All of those different offerings are available 2 nights and 2 nights only. I do want to give everyone a quick forward look at what the future looks for SnackChat. We decided that we were going to do our trip reporting a little differently, and so we made notes of all the wonderful things that we got to try and eat along our way when we were in the resorts last week. So we're going to go through basically all the things that we got to try and experience and what our thoughts were on the different beverages, cold brews,
probably over
snacks,
a couple episodes,
treats.
I would say.
We're going to do a couple episodes. We haven't decided yet if it's going to just be, like these are all the savory things that we tried. And these are, we haven't decided how we're breaking it down. But if you're curious of what things we were able to try and what our thoughts were on them, make sure you stay tuned for the next couple of weeks, specifically for SnackChat.
Spoiler alert, I only had 2 pickles.
I was actually surprised by that.
Teresa had a pickle, and halfway through she said, I think I'm a half pickle girl.
Yeah, I think I'm a half pickle person because halfway through the pickle, I was just kind of over it.
But it was so hot. It was refreshing because it was hot out. Mm-hmm. And we just wanted to sit. We found a nice bench on Buena Vista Street in the shade.
And just people watched.
Oh, it was very nice.
While we were snacking on our pickles. It was very nice.
Yeah. But I wasn't a pickle and a half person, so...
No,
I didn't eat Teresa's pickle.
I did finish it, though. I was pretty proud of myself. But then the other thing, too, is I will also be making sure to share photos and videos that we took of the different food offerings with little write-ups on our thoughts there as well, if you're more of a visual person when it comes to seeing what it is we're talking about food-wise. Well, it is that time again for our friend Eric over at Concierge to catch us up on other Disney news.
Hello everyone, this is Eric Johnson with Concierge, and welcome to the D180. While Ted and Teresa cover all things Disneyland, in the D180 we take a spin around the rest of the Disney universe, and we do it in 180 seconds. Let's jump right in. My goodness, what a week! This is another one where your distinguished hosts are likely to cover all of the big news. Disneyland expansions announced just after the start of the 75th anniversary celebrations. Major Walt Disney World changes altering a classic portion of the park to make way for a whole lot of new stuff. You know what? I'll just leave all of that to the pros. There is plenty more to cover right now. Here's a quick one. That Disney Starlight Parade I mentioned last episode has an opening date. It's July 20th. There. We're off to a good start here. This is definitely a reason for me to get back to the East Coast, but... oh man, Paint the Night is back too? Oh, decisions. While we're talking Walt Disney World, kind of, let's talk club-level rooms. Many Disney resort hotels have a club level with some additional amenities. You might get great views of a theme park or fireworks or even the vast Walt Disney World property. Every room also comes with access to the club level lounge, a location that offers free snacks, meals, drinks, snacks, and more snacks throughout the day. If you're the type of family who likes to head back to the hotel a time or two during the day, this is a great arrangement. Get some breakfast before leaving in the morning. Grab some snacks for your lunch, then come back to watch fireworks from the comfort of your hotel. The rooms come at a premium, but they have a lot of benefits, and it's entirely up to you how much you use. There are a lot of great videos online that show off these lounges too. Take some time, give a few videos a shot, and then ask your travel planner if your next trip should be the time you upgrade. Hey, let's get out of town for a little bit, huh? Head overseas to Europe, where National Geographic Expeditions unveiled their 2026 itineraries. Longtime listeners know that I love the idea of a river cruise, and I really need to get one of these on the books. These cruises are your chance to visit medieval castles and museums, even after hours. All of these tours are fully guided. Meet with historians and cultural experts to deepen your understanding of these amazing lands. These new ships are even designed to lessen their impact on the environment as you cruise. Please check out these new trips, one down the River Rhine through Germany and France, the other through Holland and Belgium, also on the Rhine as it were. In both, experience history, cuisine, and culture like you never have before. These trips are already posted for 2026, and these smaller, more intimate cruises book up fast. So call your expert concierge travel planner today. I hope you enjoyed our quick spin around the rest of the Disney universe. If you would like to learn more about these Disney adventures or just have a few questions, please come on over. Visit the social media and websites of both DLWeekly and Concierge, and then reach out to your personal travel planner, Teresa. She looks forward to planning something special for you and yours. I'm Eric Johnson, and this has been your D180.
Thanks, Eric.
Your attention, please. DL Weekly Trivia is now leaving for a Grand Circle tour of the Magic Kingdom, with stops at New Orleans Square, Mickey's Toontown, and Tomorrowland. All weekly tiers for...
Welcome to Trivia Land, where we have some wonderful listener-submitted questions all lined up for you. 4 regular round questions and a bonus question for tonight. Are you ready? Do you have brains full of knowledge now that you're fresh back from a trip to Disney?
Maybe.
That, and we had a week off from Trivia Land. So that might be helpful too.
You're feeling refreshed and reloaded and ready to go?
Yes.
All right.
We want to know what queue you're in, because that's all fresh in our mind.
Well,
we could even maybe do some cast member costumes, because those are fresh in our mind.
One thing I just want to put out there that we realized today was if you sent any trivia in through our website since like mid-March, there was a glitch, but we didn't lose any of them. So I was able to send those along to Vern and James this evening. So if you haven't heard your question, that's why. Because it got sucked into a black hole of technology, but I was able to rescue it from the black hole.
They got stuck in the Esplanade. They have now made their way into Trivia Land proper.
Yeah,
where
there you go.
They can live their best trivia.
They got held up at security.
Trivia question lives.
Yeah.
They got held up at security.
And so to anybody that answered the call when we were begging for questions, we now have access to them, and we do appreciate you very much, and we will get to them as soon as we are able to.
But still send in more.
Keep sending
Yes,
them
we
in.
always appreciate more questions, and Everybody that sent some in, we are going to start going through them, so we thank you very much for those. But let's get to the ones that we have for now. Your first listener-submitted question from listener Ryan J. How many feet of rail line were in Walt's Carrollwood Pacific Railroad?
I'm a really bad guess at like knowing how many feet are in a football field?
It's done by yards.
Okay. How many yards in a football field?
Well, how many feet in a yard?
there's
So, you
like-
could
There's like
answer.
three-
So 300 in a yard.
But it's not 3 feet in a yard. It's like 3
Yeah,
point
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's 3 point something in a meter. It's 3 feet in a yard.
Oh.
Okay.
What? Us Americans are
Or
silly.
it's 2 point something in a meter because a meter's a little shorter than a yard.
We should just go to the metric system. It'd be so much easier. Anyway,
Well, yes.
325 feet.
how many feet? I'm going to say 700 feet.
Oh.
It's probably more than that, actually. But
May I suggest you both go significantly higher?
oh, okay.
Higher?
Please.
Let's see. That was nice that he gave us
1,200 feet.
a significantly higher, Teresa.
What's significant?
I said significantly higher than 300.
Oh,
1,200 is significantly higher than 300.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
but you said significantly high. Well,
You
okay.
said both significantly higher.
Fine.
I did.
I will say 3,000 feet.
All right, Tag's saying 3,000 and Teresa's saying 1,200.
Mm-hmm.
Final answers?
I
Final.
love you 3,000. Isn't that the thing? Sorry.
All right. Final answers.
Yeah.
All righty. Your second listener submitted question from listener Jessica M. DCA's animation building has the Animation Academy building. Am I getting the right name? for that?
Animation building, yeah.
This is the best question ever. I don't even know what it is, but wonderful topic.
We hung out in there this trip for
did.
quite a while.
As I first got this question, I'm looking at it, I'm going, okay, I know what building they're asking about, but is that the right name of the building?
Yep.
So the building
Yep.
itself
Yep.
is the animation building.
It is
and
the animation
inside
building, okay.
is
Is
the
the
part of it
animation
is the
academy.
animation.
Part of it is the
Academy.
Animation Academy. Got it. All right,
Yeah.
excellent. We do
I
have
just
the right
always
building.
call
Yep.
it the Animation Academy.
and Turtle Talk and
Anna and Elsa.
on an
Yeah.
Elsa
Royal,
meet and greet. Yeah.
royal greeting
Yep,
or something.
excellent. All right, so question from Jessica M. DCA's Animation Building has a most glorious display of all our favorite Disney classics. What is the order of the sequence for these wondrous displays, specifically the films?
Oh, I don't know because they just changed it.
I
did
know
just
it. It
change it.
took me a long time to find it.
You got the new one with that has
I got the new
Coco?
one. I had to watch a TikTok with the person that recorded it had a very unsteady hand and my
You
eyes
know
were
what's
throbbing.
Wild is that we sat in there just like waiting for our animation class. That loop is pretty darn long. Like it's pretty long.
We were trying to figure out why they had to take anything out, though, because they could have
Yeah.
kept going. I'm just going to be honest with you, Vern.
I don't even remember what
I
else
am not even
included.
going to attempt an answer of this.
I know Coco's included.
I mean, I can tell you some of the things that are
Bambi.
included, but I have no idea what the order is.
I don't know. Let's just go with what's included. Coco, Bambi,
Mm-hmm. Tangled. Isn't Tangled? Yeah,
Frozen.
Tangled. Frozen.
we're terrible.
Incredibles.
Yes, The Incredibles.
I'm trying to think of the things that were on the
things that
floor.
were on the ground. Good thought process. Thought process.
Encanto.
Yes, Encanto. Toy Story? Yeah, Toy Story.
Toy Story.
Pinocchio.
Mm-hmm. Did they have Lion King? They had Lion
Yes.
King. Incredibles.
Finding Nemo.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting help from the chat. Today is our live stream for some of our higher levels of support. Olivia's throwing in Beauty and the Beast.
I think Beauty and the Beast used to be in there, but I don't think it's in there anymore.
Okay.
And Megan is throwing
Megan
in
threw
101
in
Dalmatians.
Dalmatians.
Which I also think...
I don't think it was there.
I don't
this
remember
last
seeing
time.
it this time.
We have 11 right now. How many? Can you give us a hint? How many are there?
14 by my count.
Dang. Okay, so we're not too. We're maybe doing okay. Yes, Olivia, I think you're right. I think Lilo and Stitch are in there.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember because I am always drawn to the like funky
Cars
early
was in there, wasn't it?
Cars, yes. The early concept type drawings and not necessarily like the movie clips, if that makes sense.
I'm just thinking about what was in Paint the Night, and so I'm just trying to... Peter Pan was in there, wasn't it?
Could be. We'll go with it. And I think Cinderella is in there.
I mean, we'll find out.
I think
guess.
we've got 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14. We've got 15. That's okay. We'll
Okay.
leave it.
That's where we're going to stand,
We're
Vern. We don't have an
sticking with
order. We just have a list,
Yeah.
Okay.
which
so-
I think is actually a pretty hard trivia question in and of itself.
All right, so please recap for me. What do you have on your list?
We've got Coco, Bambi, Encanto, Toy Story, Pinocchio,
Uh-huh.
The Incredibles, Lion King, Frozen, Tangled, Finding Nemo, Lilo and Stitch, Cars, Peter Pan, and Cinderella. Now I'm questioning Lilo and Stitch if that was still there or not. But oh well.
No, Moana was definitely in there.
Oh.
So put Moana
Now
on there.
we've got 16.
Moana was definitely in there. All right, I think that's where we need to stop, Vern.
All right, I think I kept up on writing all yours
I
down.
feel like
We have them
don't-
written down too, so
Yep.
Yeah,
we,
I
We
feel
can
like we
always
don't
compare
have that many
notes.
classics in there, but we'll leave it. We'll leave it as is. We could be totally off base.
Your third regular round question from listener Donna S. What is the omnibus chassis made from?
the omnibus chassis.
Like, are you looking for a metal or like
No,
it's
like the what base vehicle was the chassis originally from
Oh.
before it became the omnibus?
That's a great question.
Because it's not like they just went out and got a kit that said, this will become an omnibus. Bob Gurr had to actually
Yeah.
create the omnibus from, I want this piece from this vehicle and this
Yeah.
piece from this vehicle. So what vehicle did he take the chassis from to make the omnibus?
I'm going to say like a school bus. Because it's kind of got like a longer
Yeah.
wheelbase.
Yeah.
But it could also be like some type of pickup truck too.
I was kind of leaning like towards like a pickup truck type
Okay.
of thing. So I'm going to
We're
say
bad Bob Gurr
a pickup
historians.
truck.
I'm going to say a school bus.
I'm pretty sure I've heard this from Bob before,
I think so too.
but I don't remember.
All right, so we've got a school bus and a pickup truck. Final answers?
I know.
All right. And your fourth and final regular round question from listener Jill M. How much is a local call from the phone booth in Metropolis?
Oh,
Ooh,
rest in peace.
not yet.
Yeah. Don't bury it before it's dead. Jeez.
It's got to be something it's not like 25 cents. It's got to be like a different type of currency, right?
I don't know what their currency was.
I don't either.
Their energy was like screams
Screams.
or laughs.
Screams
in
and
the end.
laughs. What's a scary number?
13?
No, like a punny scary number.
I don't know.
I love it. April, Megan in the chat. Too soon.
But I will
It is
say,
too soon.
yeah, it is too soon. You know why? James and I finally made it past Fantasia in our list. We started over and we've seen the first two movies
What
plus
does this
Fantasia.
have to do with our attraction?
Because I haven't got to Monsters Inc. yet.
I was like, what does this have to do with
To know
With
know stuff from Monsters Inc. that I want to pay
Monsters,
attention to.
the attraction going away? I'm still not. I don't know. I'm not okay with that news. Anyways, okay, back to the question. Back to the question.
I'm just gonna say 13 something cents or something.
I have no idea.
Stumped? Is that your answer?
Yeah, stumped. It's got to be
Stumped.
something clever. That's all I know.
All right, so Tag's saying 13 cents and Teresa's saying stumped.
Yeah.
Final answers?
Yep.
All righty. And your bonus question from listener Evan. Disneyland is a place that houses what kind of animals?
Houses what kind of
Wait,
animals?
Can you
Animals.
say it one more time.
Disneyland is a place that houses what kind of animals?
So, are we
what,
talking?
what live animals can you find living in Disneyland right
Cats.
Okay, so you can find cats, you can find ducks, you can find geese.
Well, you used to be able to find geese.
No, you can. I saw geese.
Did you?
Yeah, geese, hummingbirds, lots and lots of hummingbirds.
Are we counting the horses? Because technically they're off-site.
Yeah,
but...
we can say horses because you can find them there.
Yep. Are we getting
now?
like
We will
crazy?
count it
There
that
was-
you've been thorough enough.
What?
We will count it that you've been thorough enough.
Oh, okay.
Final answer?
Yeah.
Final.
All right.
I could have said cockroaches, since when we were waiting for one of the projection
goodness.
shows, there was some child that we thought was getting
Murdered.
had
Child was a
hurt, got
cockroach?
severely hurt, and an adult calmly turned around. They're like, it was just a cockroach running by, which not great. Like, they're kind of creepy, crawly.
I mean, you get
icky.
cockroaches.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Well,
Well,
yeah, it was. She was. I mean, like, cast members rush over because they thought something was horribly wrong.
It was like
It was
blood
quite the
curdling
scream.
scream. Yeah.
oh my.
It was not the happiest day on
Well,
earth
and
for her.
everybody moved.
Yeah, everyone shifted out of the way
Yeah.
too. So it was like, holy buckets, what's going on over there? A la cucaracha.
You just startled
I know.
Piper.
She's not a fan of the cockroaches either. I don't blame you, Pipes. Don't blame you one bit. Pretty girl. All right, sorry, Vern. We're done.
Well, listeners, how did you do listening at home? How do you think Tag and Teresa did? If you stick around until after the discussion, we can all find out together.
Well, this week for our discussion topic, we are talking about we're coming to you from Disneyland, first of all. That's why you hear the noise behind you. We're on the Matterhorn Way parade route area by the castle. We got some Matterhorn music kind of going on in the background. But we're going to talk about two things that we were able to experience that are not in the park.
Yeah. So both of these we were very fortunate. So these were not reasons that we booked our trip. They just so happened to land during our already booked trip. So we felt super fortunate and very lucky to be able to add these cool things to our trip. So the first thing that we did
They can keep doing this, yes.
was the D23 Spotlight Series presented by the Walt Disney Archives, and we were celebrating the 55th anniversary of the Walt Disney Archives.
Yeah, so this was at an area we saw on Bob Gurr's tour last year. It's actually at the Grand Central Air Terminal campus that is part of the Imagineering, actually.
Yeah, it's in Glendale, so it's actually just down the street from the 1401 Flower Street building.
Yeah, almost around the corner, you could say, which is really cool. We actually found out that there's some offices for the D23 people in there, which was really neat to learn. But yeah, so beautiful day in the morning. We got to park in the Grand Central campus, creative campus parking structure, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, so we got to park technically on property, which was pretty fancy.
So we walked up. If you haven't been there before, there's a beautiful kind of grassy area that they've just done a really nice job. This used to be the airport way back in the day, and they've taken it over and converted it into this cool space. And one of the things that they had out there was, if you've seen any clips of Walt Disney it was like a parade or something, where he's steering with this kind of bar. It's apparently an electric runabout is what it's called. And Walt Disney drove it, and they had this there.
Yeah, so this was one of the Main Street vehicles, but it has since been retired. You don't see it in the park. I believe that this was kind of something that Walt would take kind of his VIPs, I guess, up and down with more so than just the general other Main Street vehicles, is my understanding. But there was this whole big, we'll be honest, there was a whole big long plaque and write-up about all the details of it. We were too awestruck and gobstruck by the vehicle, so we did not take the time to read all of it. But it's very iconic, and it definitely is something that if you've ever seen the photo or video of him, you know exactly what vehicle we're talking about, because it doesn't have a steering wheel, like Tag said. Yeah. It's just this bar that he kind of pushes and pulls, and that's how it steers.
Okay, so while you were talking about that, I had not read this.
Yeah, you just skim
Did you
through
read
it.
This?
No, not yet, because I was too gobstruck.
Yeah, so apparently they made 4 of them, and they were deployed to the park in 1960, and they were called runabouts at one time. They were called VIP cars and electric cars at another time. But you could hire them as a guest. A guest could hire them, and you got a personal driver with them to run around. So how cool. Anyway, these were apparently in use at Disneyland from 1960 to 2023 even. So that's crazy.
That is pretty crazy.
And of course, designed by Bob Gurr. and was manufactured at the studio's machine shop under the direction of Disney legend Roger Broggie. So that's really cool.
So we got to see that before we even checked in and got inside of the building. They had this parked right out front there, which was
right. We
super
haven't even
awesome.
got to the inside.
So we checked in, and then inside were more archives artifacts on display. There was a display case that had the live-action Cinderella slipper on display. Also, the live-action Christopher Robin story, the Winnie the Pooh doll, as well as a Mickey Mouse plush doll. It's one of those old plush dolls. It's actually photographed. That there's a photograph of Walt holding it. Those were all on display for us to see, along with...
There was a Mickey Mouse His Book. It's a prop storybook from the Disneyland TV show that was actually used by Walt Disney. This thing is like any of those books. Have you seen any of Walt presenting like Sleeping Beauty or anything on TV? There was always this giant storybook that would open up. And so it's one of those for Mickey Mouse.
And then the other thing, which of course I was all sorts of excited to see, was we had a set of hitchhiking ghosts that had been residing in the mansion. I believe these ones were from the Walt Disney World mansion. Had been residing in the mansion in their, I don't know, not their corruptible mortal. It's like their second past life now. But anyways, so those are on display. So that was very, very cool. But the coolest thing that I don't even know, did you realize that all of the items that were on display were featured in the nice little postcard gift set that they gave us. So these were all items that, I don't know, had some sort of like iconic significance. There was a photo with them or whatever, and they recreated and like, they talked about this process during it, but they photo all of the things that are in the archives. And what they did, like, so the one with the Mickey Mouse doll with Walt, for example, they photographed the Walt doll and they kind of superimposed it onto the picture. So the photo is in black and white of Walt, but then Mickey Mouse is in color because it's the photo of the actual item that the archives has. So it's not like they just, it was the original photo and they colored in it. No, they like superimposed the artifact photo. So cool.
Yeah, as part of the talk, they were mentioning that they looked at the archive photo of the item like in use, and then when they took the archive photos, which are done like in a setting where they do all of this and they scan them and everything, they made sure that they took it from the same like perspective so they could put it in, which is really cool. And yeah, they gave us a set of postcards that had all of those in it, and we didn't even realize that until they were telling us that on stage. We're like, oh well, this makes much more. I thought it was just a black and white photo that they colored the different pieces.
And then, so the first set part of this, so it was kind of a multi-part presentation, but the first part was kind of highlighting the different areas of the archives and also talking about what each of them do and how they all support each other and work together and what that looks like. So we got to hear from Mike Buckoff, who is the senior manager for photo research, Nicole Carroll, who is a manager in research, Cesar Gallegos, who is a senior manager in collections and preservation, as well as Matthew Adams, who is the manager of the exhibit. So most of those exhibits you can see either traveling the country, if not the world, or if you go to any of the D23 expos or the Destination D event, they also do special exhibits for that too. I want to say they also were in charge of all the small exhibits. So sometimes, like if you're in Carthay Circle, they'll have that little display window with stuff from the archives there, and they also loan stuff out to other museums and other areas for their display too, which was cool.
Yeah, one of the things that they talked about that was really fascinating to me was the process in which an item goes through the archive. So how they sometimes come about it, which we had kind of heard Becky Klein in previous things talk about a little bit, but we never had really heard all of the different steps that it takes to get inducted into the archives, if you will.
Yeah.
So they get the item, they measure it, they take a bunch of photos of it, they do a 3D scan and put it into their system.
They take meticulous notes.
Meticulous notes, for sure. They do all of this stuff, and then it ends up going to somebody who like packages it or puts it in like acid-free paper, depending on what it is, or treat it with care. Some of the items they were talking about too, like they said that some items you can just handle, some items you need to have white gloves to make sure that the grease in your hands don't get on and all that. But it goes into their whole system, and they actually were talking about how they had a whole crew of people that their whole job has been to digitize all of their assets. And they said that they've gotten through like thousands and thousands of them in the last year, but they have like millions of items in the collection. So it's going to take a while. But they said it's like a full-time job that all these people, that's all they're doing. is going through this process, and it was pretty cool.
The other cool thing with it being like digital is they categorize and know exactly where all the stuff is. I mean, you'd have to, otherwise it'd be very easy to lose something. So if they need something in particular, they can go to their system, pull it up, and they can be like, oh, it's in warehouse 5 and section this, whatever. Obviously, we don't know where it is because that's how they keep these items safe, is so the public doesn't know. But I do love that they've been doing all of these events to kind of like bring the archives and bring the items out of the archives and kind of bring the archives to the fans, because it's impossible for them to bring us, the fans, to the archives because we've been told it's multiple warehouses and multiple places that all this stuff is at, and it's all packed away, so you'd be looking at boxes. But then B, like they gotta protect it so it's not like they can give away all their secrets. So I love that they're bringing this stuff out for us and doing events just like this one.
Yeah.
Oh, you know who we forgot, which was one of the cool highlights? There was another gentleman that I'm forgetting his name, but he was head of acquisitions. So they talked about the acquisition process, and in his talk, he got like the cool highlight of the first part of the presentation. They showed off some recently acquired assets that just are now making their way into the archives.
Are you talking about the ones they had there in person? Yeah, so that was really cool. They brought out different people to talk about different parts of this. One of the things that they had that's newer, let's say, they started with that, is they brought in the harmonica that was used for A Complete Unknown. So they were able to get that, so it's a harmonica and the holder. And he made a joke. I can't tell you that it did touch Timothée Chalamet. I can't tell you it didn't. So that was kind of a funny thing. They had the doll from the new Lilo and Stitch live action movie that one of the coolest things was it has this little camera, and he put his little glove on and he made it flash. So that was it was the Scrump doll from Lilo and Stitch. So that recently came in. They talked about how great a condition that was in. And then also a portal blaster from Lilo and Stitch was also there. This thing was kind of massive. And they talked about all the different versions that they made of this thing, because they have some that are plastic and some that are foam and some that are steel. So they always talk about all those different types of things when bringing them into the collection. But I think Teresa wants to talk about the next thing that was unexpected and super cool.
This, audible gasps from not just myself, but the entire audience, because this was not something, I don't know what I was expecting with this entire event, but it totally exceeded all of my expectations. And this was kind of one of those moments that you're like, what? So the next set of items that they were officially inducting into the archives at that point was things from the Muppet collection, and so they actually had someone from Muppet Studios who's kind of their archives person for the Muppet Studio that kind of catalogs and takes care of their items. They handed some very important things over to the Walt Disney Archives that definitely need to be preserved, and the thing that's amazing too, we got to go right up to them, and they're in really, really great condition. But the first thing they unveiled was none other than Kermit the Frog, who is actually used by Disney legend Jim Henson, a used Kermit, one of the Kermits that Jim Henson himself puppeteered. Absolutely crazy. They were actually talking about how even after Jim had passed, that Kermit went back into their normal use and rotation, because the Muppets kind of have a closet, if you will, of all of their puppets and all of their costumes and wigs and accessories and all that they kind of use over and over and over again. So it's not like movies where sometimes they just, it's just for the one movie and then they move on and they make a new one for the next movie, whatever. So that was pretty amazing. And along with Kermit, we got to his banjo that he played Rainbow Connection on.
Screen use. Screen use.
Yep, the screen use banjo was there, as well as, what was this cute one? It was a Baby Muppets banjo.
Yeah, Muppet Babies.
Muppet Babies banjo. But the banjo was from the Muppet movie, used by Kermit the Frog. I don't know. It'd be
super
cool
iconic, right?
If the Kermit puppet that was there was the same Kermit that used that banjo. I don't know if that's true or not, but it would be cool if it was.
Yeah, they talked about with acquisitions, like you were saying, sometimes these things go back into their circulation, and the representative from the Muppets said, we need to pull that out. We could get another one. Yeah. So the next section that they brought out was super fascinating.
Yes.
So Disney legend Jimmy McDonald, he was really famous for doing sound effects for animated movies. Some of the things we've seen before at like the Disney 100 exhibition was like the wallet that they had that like would make the footsteps of the dwarves from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and he had a replica to show us at this event because he said the real one is on that exhibition right now. And then they found some of these, like, what did he call them? They're like
ale jugs.
Moonshine
jugs, yeah.
For making like whistle things. He had these bamboo sticks that they used to make the fire sound for Bambi. They had these giant truck disc brakes that they used for bells.
Yeah.
So he said, like, any Disney movie you hear a bell, it's these disc brakes.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And he used them in front of us. He hit the thing and it made the noise. Because the guy that was there talking about these worked with him at one point. And so now he was passing along all these things that he actually saved out of a warehouse.
That was fascinating. So I don't remember where these things had been stored, but Jimmy had passed. And somebody was going through and, like, thinking it was junk, because if you didn't know what these were for,
jugs, old disc brakes.
Yeah, it does kind of look like there's a flea market going on or something. So he said it was Kevin Rafferty.
Yeah,
said, we need to go save this stuff. Like, this is important, like to Disney history, but like it's stuff that's useful. We've used this. This was, I mean, those moonshine jugs. That was the organ, Grumpy's organ, in the animated Snow White movie. Oh, which we also found out when they just made the live action version, the director came to Disney and was asking about the sound effects, and they actually used the same set of items that was used in the original animated classic. So the sounds,
cool.
So the sound effects items are the same from the original, which was crazy.
Without the archives, this would not be possible.
I know. So that was pretty wild. Oh, and then we have this other weird-looking thing. I don't even know how to describe this. It was like, it looks like an oversized spool with a giant piece of rubber hose coming out of it. But anytime you hear, like, a bug, most specifically, this was created for Evinrude from the Rescuers to make that, like, bzzz noise. That's what Jimmy created, this item to make that, to make that very specific noise. And so the one that Jimmy used has been inducted into the archives. He did have one that they, like a, what do you call it? Like a replica.
Yeah. That he played for us.
Yeah, that he played for us, that they use for other things now currently. It's still in use. But this one was special because it was the original that Jimmy had made.
It's fascinating to me that there was somebody who could take things that are not that sound. Because you'd think, okay, like you and I, if we were gonna make a movie, we wanted to replace some sound effects, we might go, okay, we need a bell, so let's go find a bell.
A bell, yeah.
But no, let's find some rusty disc brakes, and that's the bell. I don't know, it's just crazy.
And they gave stories because he was like, oh yeah, Jimmy wanted to go out and get like some nice brass bells, but they just didn't have the budget. So he went down to the junkyard down the street and like found these and said, oh, these actually sound pretty good.
Which is crazy.
Just wild, absolutely wild. So that was something I wasn't expecting. So if that wasn't enough to see all those amazing items get unveiled and kind of like, ta-da, moment for that, the next section brought up another panel of folks that were talking about how the archives then assists the Walt Disney Company and what things the archives does to support Walt Disney Company. So they had people from different areas of the company kind of to represent that had different stories of things that they've specifically worked on the archives with. I will let Tag tell you what amazing folks were there.
So, of course, Becky Klein came out to kind of moderate the panel. We had Kim Irvine came out. We had Don Hahn was there. Justin Springer, who comes like a producer for film. Of course, Bill Farmer, the voice of Goofy. We had Don Hahn for film. And then Martha Blanding, who just recently got her Legends thing, her house burnt down in the fires, and she's got that given to her, which was really cool.
Yeah, it was like just right before we came, I think, or right after we came, they had a new Legend ceremony, like a new little ceremony for her and someone else I'm blanking on the name of, but they both had lost their homes in the recent fires and, of course, also lost their different awards from Disney, including their Disney Legend Awards. So it was a pretty big deal and a pretty big honor that Disney re-gave them those awards. So
a new piece of information that Teresa and I were surprised to hear from Kim Irvine was the fact that it was Kim Irvine and the archives worked together to bring the Little Man of Disneyland to here. And it was so funny because Becky Klein, they were talking about it and how Becky had come across this Little Man of Disneyland book and she had read it and was fascinated with it. And so she talked to Kim Irvine to try to get this done. And the creative team, they looked all over the park trying to figure out where they could do this. And they looked at Adventureland and they found the tree where he lives now. And in one night, they installed it, and Becky Klein was so funny because they had an event like the day before, maybe the day of or something, and it was supposed to be just a secret. They weren't going to tell anybody. It was just there, and Becky Klein like leaked it to the press that they had done this, and I was like, I'll bet you they wanted it to be kind of like a natural, people come across it, but Becky was so excited by it, probably. But that was cool that Becky Klein was directly involved in bringing something to the park.
Well, and because it was her idea. Yeah. She said she called up Kim and said, "Hey, what do we think of this?" Yeah. So that was pretty amazing. The other thing that was incredible that kind of ties back into the parks is when they were re-theming the Tarzan's treehouse into the current Adventureland treehouse. Kim was trying to find, kind of like go back to its roots, and was trying to find different was trying to find plans, photos, whatever, all the information she could find, because one of the things that she remembered as a child coming to Disneyland was her fascination with the water wheel and the buckets. And so they really wanted to incorporate that back into the new version. And so she contacted the archives and was like, we're trying to find as much information as we can because we want to rebuild and have those back.
For schematics or blueprints or anything.
Yeah. Well, and so Becky apparently just kind of sat there and thought a moment and said, you know what? I think I have the original water wheel, which she did. She joked. She's like, I have a really large garage because she can fit all of these amazing things in it. So while they weren't able to use the original water wheel, which is interesting that the archive still has, they did take they were able to do measurements and castings and whatever they needed to do to recreate it. So the water wheel that's there today is a replica of the water wheel that was there originally.
Made off of castings of the original one, yeah. So that was so cool that they were able to do that. And this just shows you how important an archives is, because otherwise they would have built something new or whatever. And it's neat that they kind of have this. There's so many things around the park, especially Disneyland specifically, that have little homages to things and stuff like that. And I think the archives are an important part of all of that.
100%.
They also talked, the next gentleman was talking about film and stuff, and he had worked on Tron Legacy, and has worked on the upcoming Tron movie, Tron Ares, which is coming out. And they went to the archives to look at the costumes and look at all these different things that came from the original movie to be able to utilize it in their new movie. And he talked about how great that is for them to be able to go back to somewhere to get some of this stuff.
Do you remember his funny little story?
No.
So I do not know I'm a bad Disney fan. I don't know anything about Tron. But he said that it wasn't a spoiler, but in this new Tron, they kind of pay homage to the original, and you go into someone's office. Yeah. Someone that I don't remember. I know nothing. One of the main characters.
It's the dad, the main dad's.
It's played by Jeff Bridges, right?
Yep.
You go into his office, and so he decided, I've never been to Walt's office. What a perfect. So anyway,
excuse to go see it.
So he got to go up into Walt's office and kind of like get a feel, because the time frame would have been similar. That office, Jeff Bridges' character's office for that movie, is kind of has a little touch of Walt's office with it as well.
So just so you guys know, it might sound a little bit different. It started raining here, so we moved over. We're sitting in the over by the Princess Fantasy Fair area, so that's why it sounds a little bit different now.
Moving on, so we were talking about how the archive supports film. So moving on, Don Hahn was talking about he's done a lot of stuff for animation. Of course, he helped with that's how he started with Disney. That's why he is a Disney legend, is because of all of his work with Disney animation. He was a big part of the Renaissance and got to work in the studios during all that amazingness that's like The Lion King and all that. But anyway, so he was talking about his time when he was at animation. Apparently, where they used to store all of the old film cells was kind of not great. So Don actually took initiative to hand over the archives of the film collection and cells and stuff over to Dave Smith. He said that when they started, right, Dave was just kind of poking around trying to find what he could find wherever he went. So he went over to animation and said, hey, what do you guys have over here? And so it worked out well, because what did Don Don say? They stored it in like the boiler room or something because they were short on space, so they just kind of tucked it where they could.
Yeah, he's like in a great spot in the boiler room where it's all humid and warm and.
So he talked about, his connection with the archives for that, but then also talked about his more current connections with the archives because Don is writing all sorts of wonderful books about Disney. He actually just wrote a book that was just recently released about Disneyland for the 70th.
And
that's
if you're
kind
a
of like a
D23
deep
member,
dive.
you can get it.
Yeah.
As part of your gift.
So he talked about his relationship with the archives and how he is now kind of working with them on the, as being someone that needs research and kind of working with them for that end.
Yeah. It must be amazing that if you're working on like a book or something that you can come in and browse through it. And they talked, this is a little off topic, but talking about the book, they talked about the worst thing about writing a book is, especially with a lot of these big coffee tale books, they said, are the fact that you have to cut stuff because like there's just not enough room.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll make a sequel because they were talking about all this stuff that they were able to get through the archives, but they couldn't get it into the book because of space.
Yeah,
so
maybe, you never know.
Yeah.
Bill Farmer talked about his kind of take on things was, of course, he's a voice actor, so he hasn't had to do much as far as interacting with the archives for his day-to-day, but he talked about his experience as becoming a Disney legend and kind of what becoming a Disney legend was about, because we did have a couple of legends, 3 legends up on that stage. We had Martha Blanding, Don Hahn, and then Bill Farmer, the voice of Goofy, among others, up there. So he talked about his experience with the archives during that process. And then Martha Blanding was talking about her time at Disneyland as a VIP tour host guide and how she would work with the archives when she was trying to research things to try, and she did a lot of like events that would host people in the park, and so she would go to the archives to kind of research and like get to know as much as she could get to know about that person and their contribution and whatever, so that it was a really good experience, so she could really make sure that the person felt comfortable, the person knew that she knew their contributions and their importance, and so she would be able to highlight that when they were doing their events and things here at the parks.
She also she holds like a really cool, I don't know, accolade in a way maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Of her book that she wrote. She said that they take it and they get it vetted by the company, and the archives looks through it and vets it. And they said that usually when you write a book and you send it off for that type of thing, there's usually mistakes and errors and stuff that they have to get fixed, or things are inaccurate, or there's different stories or whatever. She said her book did not need any notes or updates because it was totally accurate. So
very meticulous.
That's giving credit to not only the archives but also to Martha for going through the diligence to make sure that she's putting out like a totally factually accurate thing. She also brought up, talking about factually accurate, the funniest, what I thought one of the funniest moments of the entire panel was she was talking about dispelling Walt being frozen, because she was around someone and they said that they decapitated him and they froze his brain, so when like later on when they came up with a cure they could bring him back or whatever, and she's like, that is not the case. He's not frozen anywhere, anything like that. So I thought that was a really funny part of that panel.
Well, the other thing that she talked about too with the book was, you're probably thinking, if you've read the book or if you know anything about her book, it's her like biography basically, so it's her experience and her time here at the Disneyland Resort and with the Disney company. So you might be thinking, what do you mean? She was going to the archives to like make sure she was remembering her own memories correctly before putting them in that book, which that's a whole nother level of like making sure you've got your I's dotted, T's crossed kind of a thing.
Well, think about this. We just saw this in the last few days and we're having trouble remembering stuff. Think about a whole lifetime of working at the park. Like, that's just crazy.
Very crazy. So that kind of wrapped it up for that event. The really cool thing too was the items that they had unveiled during the presentation. They did leave out for a little while longer, so we were able to go up and get a really close look at those new items. So overall, that, again, I wasn't sure I didn't have an expectation for what that panel was going to be, but I knew it was archives related, so of course it was going to be something we'd be interested in and we would really enjoy, and it was way more than I expected.
Yeah. Also, if you ever do get the opportunity to partake in one of these D23 events, and it happens to be the Grand Central Air Terminal, they do have a small museum there about the air terminal, and that was really fascinating too, because they had some things that were uncovered from when they were doing the renovation, so they have some stuff there from that. Yeah. They also have like some photos and stuff of back in the day when it was the air terminal, and props and stuff like that. So it was a really cool, very tiny, it was only a couple little rooms or whatever space of this, but it was really great.
Yeah. A 10 out of 10. If you guys are in the area or if you're going to be traveling and you're a D23 Gold member, be sure to check out the D23 website because they put these spotlight events on. I think it's monthly, and they're in-person events. I have heard amazing things about all of them. They had one that was on Indiana Jones that had Tony Baxter as one of the presenters. It was at the Imagineering campus. It's nothing short of amazing. These are somehow better, in my opinion, than panels that I've seen at some of the panels I've seen at D23. Like the level of stuff that goes into at the Ultimate Fan event. And I'm not dissing those at all, because what you can do here when you have just one a month is you only have one a month, so it's easier to maybe get people or whatever. But when you've got a whole weekend packed full of stuff, people can only be in so many locations at once, and all that kind of stuff. Plus, the archive stage has a bazillion different things. Everything's got a bazillion different things going on. So I was not expecting this to be the caliber it was, and it was
Well, the other thing, too, with not having it be at the Ultimate Fan event is one of the things we talked about when we talked about the Disneyland event in the past, or Teresa talked about the Pacific Northwest Mouse Meet, is these events with D23 are a little bit more intimate than the bigger panels at D23. So, you're not having everybody trying to hit up everything like Teresa said. So
yeah, that's true. All we had to do was focus on this one event.
Yeah.
And I was actually surprised. The space, it was a nice, small space. I don't think there was a bad seat in the house unless you ended up behind like the tallest person there possibly could have been. But it was, it was great.
So what's the next thing we're talking about?
So the next thing that we were able to do was also D23 related. Again, if you're a D23 member, go to the website, check this out. You can also experience this, but we got to do a Walt Disney Studios tour with D23. We, as you all know, have had the privilege of being on the studio lot one time before this, so we had gotten to see all of the monuments and the big monuments like Pluto's Corner and the Water Tower and Legends Plaza and that stuff. So I was kind of happy that we had gotten that and kind of got that excitement out of our system, because then I could save all of my excitement for the things that were probably once in a lifetime type experiences that you don't get to just always do. One of the main things we'll get to, but then I was able to save all of my excitement for that, because if that would have been, I don't know how people do it. I'm sure that people do it, but if you're a big fan and you have all of those seeing all those major things all at once, you need to take the rest of the day off to recover.
Yeah, it was really cool though. We got to go in a gate that we had not gone in before.
Oh yeah, so we got to drive onto the lot.
We got to drive on the lot and park. And then we got to hang out. We actually got there early because Teresa wanted to make sure we got there early, which was great because we got our credentials and we were able to go in. At the end, they give you time for this too, just to be clear. But we were able to get a little bit of time to browse in the store that they have, the studio store. And there's actually two stores in one, because the front store is just the studio store and the back is kind of like an employee store. Mm-hmm. And you can buy, as a guest on the lot, you can buy anything from the employee store except for things like name tags and stuff. Obviously, specific cast member stuff like that. But it was a really cool store. We'll talk a little bit more about it later, but that's how we kind of started. And then we got to start walking around the lot. A lot of the beginning of our tour was walking around a lot of the external stuff. So we, like Teresa said, we got to see the Pluto's Corner and got some history behind it, which I actually did not know the history of that sign. I literally thought that was the real sign, but it was told that it was actually there for the Reluctant Dragon movie.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I thought the Reluctant Dragon movie was literally kind of like an Elliot's Dragon kind of thing.
No.
But no, it's about a guy trying to get a movie made, and he gets on the Disney lot and is trying to do all this stuff with Walt and stuff. And I was like, are you kidding? Now I really want to see this movie.
It's on Disney Plus. It's a really fun film for those that haven't seen it also. But yeah, he's kind of he's going to the lot to pitch his idea for the movie, The Reluctant Dragon, the animated movie, The Reluctant Dragon. And he just kind of gets swept up in the magic of the Disney studio and kind of goes through all the different sections. He's in a recording booth and studio at one point. He's in animation. He's here. He's ever. So it kind of gives you
I told you guys it's storming.
Yeah, it kind of gives you an overview of the studio and how it works, and of course it's kind of comedic along the way, and then at the end you do get to see what the animated little film was.
Well, what's interesting is, first of all, I didn't know that that's what the Reluctant Dragon was. Mm-hmm. And our tour guide said that one of the main reasons that was created was so many people had questions about how animated movies were created that they created this movie to show all those different steps. So that was really cool. So we got to kind of go around, and that's what that signpost is from. And she said, but don't use it as an actual navigation because like Ink and Paint was not down here and this was not over there. It was just for the movie.
So basically, it's like the first thing from that was in the archives, basically. So right, it's a movie prop that's still to this day on the studios. We're going to call it no, I'm just kidding. It existed before the archives existed, but right. I thought that was just a sign, like you. I didn't realize that it was a sign. Like, I know people have talked about, like, oh, the Reluctant Dragon, but I didn't realize it was a movie prop from the Reluctant Dragon.
Right.
I thought the Reluctant Dragon made that sign famous. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So anyway, so that was really fun. Took a photo moment over there. We got, she pointed out different buildings along the way, like the Sherman Brothers building, the animation building.
There was a kind of interesting story that, so Walt Disney World gifted a topiary, a Mickey topiary to the lot. Now, this is a funny story. So you think like, okay, so what? They gifted a topiary. She said that they went through like 4 different topiaries because they kept making them plants that are native to Florida that don't survive in California very well. And they eventually got one that was native here after a few tries of it not working out. And I did not know this, that Michael Eisner wanted multiple topiaries down that road on the studio lot, but because they had so many problems with the first one, they're like, let's just keep this one.
We're gonna just see if Mickey.
That's such an interesting story.
We're gonna see if Mickey survives, and if he survives, we're gonna call that a win.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know that either. I thought that was really interesting. They talked about, like, there's a theater on the studio lot that has had different movie premieres, including Saving Mr. Banks was a movie that premiered there, that they actually even had, you could buy tickets to go see the movie on the lot. There was another movie that they did that for too, which was kind of crazy. They talked about the Sherman Brothers stage and why it was named actually it was more recently named the Sherman Brothers stage, but that's where they had done all of their recordings of fun songs like the Tiki 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 Room, It's a Small World, Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, all of those classics that we as park lovers know and love and beyond. So those are all recorded in that sound stage.
Which was super interesting because she said it's a building inside of a building. Mm-hmm. So that's how they do the soundproofing, because she said, look, we've got planes overhead, we've got all these different things that happen around here. And so she said it's a building inside of a building. So you go in the first set. We weren't able to go in, but she described it to us, which I was like, that's fascinating.
That was really fascinating. Another thing...
Fantasia was also filmed there because they had the orchestra in
that's
there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Another thing that was pretty amazing, speaking of buildings that we actually got to go in, is we got to go tour through almost the entirety of the animation building. So the first floor was kind of a tour in and of itself. As we walked down the hallway, they had all sorts of different things and prints and posters and whatnots on the wall, and it told the story of animation. So it actually was like the first, like how we walked through it was the process of animating a movie. So the first step was like the sketch storyboards, and then more looser and then tighter, whatever. It was amazing.
Yeah.
All the way through to the cell, to it on the set. Like, because that's the one thing is people and I always thought this, I thought movies were animated, like each scene, like if I were to pause my video player, that what was on my screen I thought was a full thing. And when I was young. It wasn't until I was an adult that I learned, oh, no, those are two different, like they're both animated, but they're two separate animations. The character lives on this clear cell, and that cell kind of is set on top of the elaborate landscape or backdrop of wherever that character is at. So they talked about that process, and so how the two different sets of animators would have to work together to make sure, oh, that's what the layout looks like, where they're going to be walking down the street or whatever. So I need to make sure Pinocchio or whoever is this correct size so that it doesn't look strange when we put them together.
Yeah, later on in the tour, they had a little model of all the different steps of the process that one of the animators had taken from, it was in a National Geographic or something like that had shown it, and they had cut out all the little pieces and turned it into like a 3-dimensional thing. So the first one is the story department, so you get, like Teresa said, the storyboarding and everything. Then you do sound recording, so the actors and the voice talent come in and record all of the stuff. Then it goes to animation, where they animate. and then it goes to ink and painting, where they do the ink and paint, and then background and layout, so making sure all the backgrounds and that they're placed properly. Then a camera department where they take pictures of all of those things, and then the film editor who edits it together, and then projection where, of course, you see it.
One fun thing about the animation building, I'm a terrible person because she told us exactly what films had been animated in that building, and I don't remember what they were, but the building was
You don't remember?
designed. I didn't take a picture of it, so I don't remember what they were. I'll let you tell that in a minute. But the building was designed specifically for animation. So Walt worked with someone to like make sure that every office had a window, and the windows had these really fancy shade type things. So if it was too bright, they could, whatever. They could adjust the light as needed, all this stuff. But one thing that they didn't realize, that they found out later, was the ink and paint building was next door. So they would finish up their animations and take them outside and walk them across the little street.
Imagine all the stuff that could happen during that.
Just imagine the possibilities there, right? So, but then somehow, I don't know who, what, why, where, when, but someone discovered that the two buildings were connected. So in the basement, there was a tunnel between the two that was built for like the air conditioning system, so it could air condition both of those buildings. And there was also like piping, all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't like intentional in the sense of what they then decided to start using it for. So that's how they started taking the animation over to ink and paint, is they would use this tunnel in the basement, and we actually got to go to the basement and see said tunnel.
Yeah, which was really neat, because when we had gone on the lot before, we had not gone down to this section, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
I think somebody on our tour was asking if it was the inspiration for the Utilidors in Disney World, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I don't remember exactly, so I'm just going to give you a rough thing. So they had a list of all the movies that have been, all the Disney animated movies, with the exception of what came after Wish recently.
Moana 2.
Moana 2 was not on the list. But basically everything, Dumbo and Bambi, like from that range, all the way through to, I think it was like Hercules or Mulan, was animated in there, with a few exceptions that were animated out in Florida, because when Hollywood Studios was built in Florida, they built an animation thing. So there was a few animated films that were done out in Florida, but otherwise they had been done in this building. And now, today, they don't do any animation in this building. It's all production companies and stuff that rent out all the different spaces. So they don't do that at all. And the ink and paint building has, 20th Century Fox in it now. So
there is still an ink and paint department. It is a 4-person team. And we got to walk past on the outside, but they have these big windows looking in. So it was really cool to get a peek in. And when we peeked in, there was actually an ink and paint artist working, and they do like commemorative cells and like cells as in like character cells for different things. And so it's kind of more of a novelty and not actually like practical. We're using this to make our films, but it's to kind of keep the history of the company alive and the spirit of animation alive.
Of the Disney company,
100%.
So of course it's got to be something that's there. I learned something really cool. For animation, they have special effects artists, and I'm like, well, what's the special effects animation? And they said, you get the primary artist that draws the character, but like for instance, like Maleficent, when she has like smoke around her or different things going on, that's special effects. Somebody else paints those things. So when Maleficent's turning into the dragon, all of like Maleficent herself is animated by the animator, but then the smoke, the shadow, the fire, the whatever is all somebody else.
Yep, is animated by the character animator.
Which is so cool.
Which then we also even learned that there's different, like a hierarchy of character animators, because you have the lead and they have like the in-betweeners and the cleanup and the alt. It's
really cool.
No wonder it takes so. I mean, what did she tell us? It's 24 frames per second of animation in the finished product of your 90-minute animated film. So, I mean, I can't even imagine. And then we talked about the ink and paint process of how the women inking, like they couldn't pick their pen up mid-line because then it wouldn't be exactly right. I mean, what an art.
And what's even crazier is they painted them backwards.
Yeah.
Because if you had like a character with like eyes and like lines and stuff, you wanted those lines to stay, but then you wanted to paint so you didn't have to like paint within the lines.
Yes.
So we saw some cells that had layers and they were painted like kind of in reverse. I don't know. I can't even imagine.
So they would put the clear cell on the cleaned up animation like on the cleaned up version of the animator's character, we'll say. And then they basically kind of traced it, but sometimes maybe they'd have to like do a little they were artists with and of themselves. It wasn't just tracing. They had to follow the guidelines. They had to know exactly what all the character needed to look like and all sorts of things. So they would do all that. And then, the painters would paint on the back side of the cell, which was just fascinating.
So cool. Then we talked about the archives a little bit earlier. We ended up in an archives exhibit that was in the middle of the hallway of a bunch of Disney books.
Oh, yeah. So we got to see cool things like the book from Hocus Pocus. Boo!
There is a signed by Walt Disney himself copy of Lady and the Tramp that was on display that was really cool. If you're fans of How I Met Your Mother, the Bro Code book was on display there.
The Isle of Naboombu from Bedknobs and Broomsticks, that book was there. Once Upon a Time from the TV show Once Upon a Time.
There's a runway book from the Devil Wears Prada movie. There's just a ton of cool stuff in here.
Lots of different things. Oh, we even have an East High School Wildcats yearbook that was also on display
really
there.
Neat.
All sorts of things. So that was really fun. Not something we were totally expecting. The animation building, very, very cool. But the highlight, I think, of the tour, and I think I can speak for us both by saying it was the highlight for both of us.
Right before we get there, though, that's getting there, is there was a animator's office set up right outside, which is the desks and stuff were custom built. They have this whole setup, a mock-up of what an animator's desk would be like,
and what their
work
office
area
was,
and the office, and it was really cool to kind of see that, since you don't really see that.
It felt like a step back in time to kind of get a feel of what that building was like in its heyday, when you had all of those different people sketching and animating and working, collaborating together to create all of our favorite Disney films. It's wild. There's so much history within those walls. We got to tour Walt's office suite, which of course consists of Walt's iconic office that a lot of us, if you see a photo of, know. We've got his working office, his formal office. They also called one space his personal office, which was kind of like a personal room for him that wasn't really an office. But before we even got to that, we got to tour the whole suite, which included other people's offices too.
Yeah. So the first room that we went into was an office that was kind of it wasn't his secretary, it was kind of like a check-in desk, because they said when you went in there, she would check you in and then would send you to the actual his assistant.
He had multiple secretaries.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first office was really not a lot going on. It was just a tiny desk in a tiny little room. And then the next room we went into was kind of think about it in a queue. It's kind of like where you would get the intro to the attraction kind of in a situation. Sure. And there was this giant display case of all of these awards that Walt Disney had won while he was alive. And the tour guide told us that he's won more awards, Oscars specifically, but also just in general, just tons of awards while he was alive, more than, specifically with Oscars, more than anybody else. He holds the record. And because of the way they give out Oscars now, she thought that it was very unlikely that anybody would ever beat the record.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
They used to give out honorary for all types of things.
And just to give you an example of some of the things that we noticed that was in this case, I spotted a Grammy for Mary Poppins. It was the Mary Poppins soundtrack won Best Recording for Children in 1964. That Grammy was on display in there, as well as maybe other awards that we're not as familiar with, that maybe he was presented to by other countries, foreign dignitaries, all sorts of really fun stuff. There was one that looked like a scuba diver, and his scuba helmet actually was kind of fashioned to look like it was mouse ears.
That's cool.
I thought that was so fun.
I don't actually think I saw that, so I'm glad you took
that one was kind of tucked in a corner. I thought it was super interesting. They had the movie prop used for Saving Mr. Banks of his honorary Snow White Oscar that has the Oscar plus the 7 mini Oscars for the 7 Dwarfs. That was also on display.
The original is at the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco.
Yeah. But this was the one that Tom Hanks used in Saving Mr. Banks. Which is also
really cool. What I thought was one of the coolest things in this room was they had Walt's date book on the desk, and it was opened up to the last day that he was on on the studio lot. And it was Thursday, October 27, 1966, and people will know this date, if you know some things about Disney, as the date that he recorded the Epcot pitch video on the lot. And so they actually have it open, and they said that this was the last day he was there, and there's just notes about, I zoomed in on it, they have shooting Epcot, and like talking about that, and doing some different planning. So anything that Walt needed planned, his secretary had in this book.
Yeah. So the other cool thing, so the first room, I didn't even realize we were walking into his working office at this point, and we just kind of like turned a corner and like poof, there we were. She was kind of like, all right, and then we kind of like, holy crap, there it is. But the really amazing thing was Dave Smith, founder of the archives, meticulously went through Walt's office. So what happened? Walt passed, and Roy just didn't know what to do. Didn't really have the heart to kind of rummage through and go through, he just didn't have the heart to pack up the office. So they just kind of sealed the doors when Walt passed, and no one was going in there. The only people allowed in there were the secretaries, because there were things like scripts and things that, projects that they were working on, that the documents that they needed were still in his office. So the secretaries were the only ones allowed to go in there, and only if needed. So when Dave Smith came in, everything in there would have been as it was the last time that Walt had been in his office. And so he meticulously documented, notated, took photos, all sorts of things, and saved and packaged lovingly all of the items within the office. And it was kind of a big push, because then the office did get used over the years by other people.
Which is shocking.
But like Michael Eisner and Frank Wells used that space, which I think that makes, sure. I'm okay with that. Roy E. Disney, Walt's nephew, used the space. Also very appropriate. That makes sense. But then it kind of was, as our tour guide told us, a bunch of random people. And the last one that kind of, I think, was like, okay, we need to not do this anymore. Apparently the last person to use it painted it some crazy cherry red color, and they're like, ew. So anyway, so there was a push in the archives, like, what if we brought Walt's office back? And that's exactly what they did. So they took a ton of time to even make sure like the paint was right, the architecture was right. If anybody changed anything, they changed it back to the point that they had, because you would ask, like, because we saw like some construction photos, the corners in some of the spaces, instead of being like a 90-degree corner on like walls, were rounded, and so they like re-rounded the corner. Anyways, all this stuff, and put everything back exactly as it was, to the point that if you were looking at the bookshelf and there was a book either like pulled out an inch, maybe it was upside down, it was kind of leaning, whatever, that was because that's exactly how Walt had left it, which was just incredible. They estimate that it's about 95% accurate to when Walt stepped out.
95% in their original stuff,
and accurate to like placement and stuff.
Because one of the things that was interesting that she told us that I was like, what? Was they had taken his couch out and sent it to the props department. So
somehow
they said when they found it, it was like rotting in a props warehouse or something. So they had to replace that because it was deteriorated. But they did find his desk and everything, and they restored all of that and put it in there, and all of his stuff. He has so many. I just, like, I'm not going to go through all of it, but, like, he has so many, like, little interesting things in his office.
Lots of little knickknacks.
Yeah, like, he had just all, and then, so, one of the other funny stories was back in the day, when Walt had this office, the phone company, nobody bought phones. The phone company gave you a phone. So, when he was packing up the office, they had, all these little knickknacks. Anyway, so they had these phones, and Dave Smith, they're supposed to return the phone when you're not using it, and Dave Smith just didn't return it. And so
well, because it had been in there for a while.
Right, but there was 2 phones that were Walt's, that are original, that are in his working office and his formal office. So they were in there, and they're the original ones. There was also one cool prop that they had, not prop, but like thing that was in there. There was his like Rolodex, and it was like open up, and it had the Sherman Brothers, or the boys. Yeah. The Sherman Boys was like an extension listed in there and stuff. And it was just so cool to kind of get a glimpse into, even though it was his office, that's still, at least, like, I feel this, like, about your office, about my office, that's a kind of a personal space.
Yeah.
And so to be in this space that Walt inhabited, and these were all his things, it was crazy.
It was really surreal, honestly. And I mean, Disney hits you in the feels with their films and with their scores and all that stuff. But there was just something about that space that, like, I started getting emotional. I don't remember what we were talking about. We were still in the first part of the office, and we were talking about the piano, because the piano that the Sherman Brothers would come in and play things for Walt is still in there, and the only people that were allowed to touch the piano after Walt had passed were the Sherman Brothers. And now that they have passed, nobody's allowed to touch it. Nobody's allowed to touch anything in the office because they're trying to preserve things. But we were sitting there and we were talking something about, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I just remember, like, we were sitting there and all of a sudden I was starting to get, like, emotional, and, like, I almost started, like, crying. I was just, something had just come over me. It was just, I think it just had, like, hit me that what we were standing in, and, like, kind of the excitement had died down, and, like, the realization of, like, wow, we're actually here. Like, think of what, like, if these walls could talk, if that piano was a player piano and could, like, play something that the Sherman Brothers had done for, like, if you could just go back in time and be a ghost or something and be in that space with all those different things that we know and love being created and being talked about, and, like, kind of see a different kind of peek behind the curtain. Like, I don't know. It was incredible. If for any other reason, this is the reason you need to do the studio tour, is to be able to be in this space, because it's unlike anything else.
Yeah. For Parks fans, of course, one of the most interesting things was was this the working office? This was the working office, was the second one, right? On the wall, and you've seen it probably in videos of Walt in his office, that kind of thing. A giant aerial photo of Disneyland that was taken in 1965, so a couple years before his passing. And so our tour guide said that that's basically the Disneyland that Walt knew, was this photo. And some of the great things on here was they had things that had already opened, or things that were going to be opening. So things that already had opened, or like the Enchanted Tiki Room was listed on here. Some things that were coming soon was It's a Small World and a new Tomorrowland. So it was just very cool to kind of see that on the wall as a Parks fan.
Yeah.
That, like, this is what Walt saw as the park.
And he had done little pinprick things out to be like, this is that, because some of it maybe you didn't know what it was going to be. I, of course, love spotting that there was the Haunted Mansion was pointed out, and it said future home of 1001 ghosts. So I don't know what happened to the other two, since it's now just 999 happy haunts residing in the mansion. But it was according to this, 1001 ghosts. There was kind of like a little point out of, like, New Orleans Square, Pirates of the Caribbean adventure. So anyways, super fun. There were photos, we were joking, well, the tour guide was joking, he had photos of the interior of his plane propped up along the base of where that map was, and, you know, she was just joking, like, oh, he must have just really loved his plane, because he had models of his plane in each of the offices, plus then he had these photos of the interior of his plane. So she was like, he may have just been so happy and proud of that he liked to kind of show off, be like, hey, have you seen my new plane? And, like, you know, which can't you just, like, see that I don't know. That's just something I felt like we could see. The one thing that we thought was wild, and we actually asked about, was the volume of ashtrays within these spaces. And apparently at that time it was considered to be very, very rude to reach over someone to ash your cigarette. So that's why there were so many ashtrays, so that basically no matter where you sat, you had your own personal ashtray, and you were not without your own ashtray.
One of the things in this office that was incredibly interesting was there was a Bambi figurine that Walt had carved himself out of wood that was sitting behind his chair there.
It was tiny,
It was very tiny, but just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Another really cool thing that was pointed out was Walt's like briefcase is also in this office. So it's just on the ground next to his desk where he had left it. But that was again, something like you said, office. This is a very personal space for him. Obviously, he built this building. He knew exactly how much square footage he wanted for himself, and he spent a ton of time in these different rooms, including the private office, which Dave Smith did not document because he felt that was the most private and personal of all. But basically, that room had, like, there was a bed in there, there was a restroom in there was even a shower in there. So if Walt ever needed, had a late night or an early morning, or just needed to rest, he kind of had his own private little space to be able to do that.
There was also, off of his working office, was the kitchen, which what was fascinating was her fridge still worked because she offered us bottled water out of Walt's fridge.
Well, and the other thing too was, of all the different people that had occupied this office, that was the only thing they didn't change. Was the kitchen. Apparently, everyone thought the kitchen was cool.
That's so cool, though. It was a very neat space for sure.
Yes.
A ton of things. They had some old stuff in the kitchen. Like, apparently Walt liked V8, and if you had a meeting with Walt, he would offer you a room temperature V8 whether you wanted it or not. They also had some can of Spam and Jell-O and some chili, and I don't know, it was just fascinating to kind of see those things.
Felt like it was frozen in time. And the other thing that was crazy to me about that, this is Walt Disney. He could have afforded all sorts of things, but what did he choose to have on hand? Was canned V8 juice.
Well, we learned
and Spam.
We learned
very
when we went to
simple
Marceline that he was.
Oh yeah.
He wasn't a fancy. He liked the kind of hearty stuff. There's also a photo by the kitchen that I just took particularly enjoyment out of. Walt looking like maniacally happy, plating a salad.
yeah.
Which was funny because he likes the things like the chili and the all the bad stuff for you, and then here he is maniacally happy with the salad. I don't know. It was just very. They also had in this little room between the kitchen and his personal space, they had a polo mallet in there, which obviously Walt really liked to play polo. There was a set of his glasses in there. There was
a railroad pass.
Yeah, there was just a lot of really cool
straw
personal
hat.
things.
World's Fair gold pass from 1962. Very cool.
Well, I would hope that he'd have
I would think he'd have
a
a pretty nice pass. But yeah, so it was a nice little collection of personal items belonging to Walt. So again, that was another thing we were not necessarily expecting to see and come across, but it just really just kind of, I don't know, it kind of really was, they did a great job with the entire space, and then even the spaces that were kind of in between that weren't, documented and put back to the original. They did a really good job of weaving together the full story and making it feel really personal and really special. And you almost, again, this is I might sound crazy, Tag may even roll his eyes, but it was almost like you could that was the closest you could probably feel to being near Walt, because you're just surrounded by all of his things. So it's just
also
unlike anything else.
Point out for the tour that this, of all the places that we experienced on the tour, this was where we were allowed to spend a lot of time.
Yeah.
It wasn't rushed.
No.
We kind of just were there in the space. She gave plenty of time for people to ask questions and converse. And there was actually a little bit of time where people were just kind of quiet in there, just kind of absorbing the space.
Yep.
And so definitely a bucket list thing that we can check off now that was just amazing. I took probably 200 photos in there.
So many photos. You were joking. You're like, I feel like Dave Smith with how much I'm documenting
It's true.
here.
Because Teresa and I were at the conclusion that we may never get back in that office again. And so there have been times where I've been for these type of trips where I'm like, oh, I wish I would have taken a photo of that. So I was literally anything I thought maybe there was a possibility that I was interested in, I was taking pictures of it. I was zooming in and taking pictures, all of those types of things.
It's a good way to do it, because you can always delete it later if you're like, what is that? What did I do? But yeah.
So we left there and we went out to the Legends Plaza, where, for those of you who don't know, this is where if they were living when they got made a Disney Legend, they have handprints. If it was giving posthumously, it was it's just the statue, the icon of the Legends statue that you're given that's part of it. So
this was really neat. The other thing too was up to this point, the studio was the studio lot was quite quiet. So we were able to get some really it felt like we were the only ones there type time in Legends Plaza. There wasn't a lot of hustle and bustle of people, running around to their next meeting or whatever. So when you get to just be in that space and be one of the only people in that space, that was also a really incredible thing.
Well, and the other people that were there were employees, all of them had their little blue badges. So you kind of felt like you were working on the lot with everybody.
One thing that's really neat that's in this space is the statues from Disneyland and Walt Disney World. Of course, we're talking the Partners statue, as well as, I don't remember what the one is that's Roy and Minnie, that is at the head of Main Street in Walt Disney World. But both of those, those statues are represented here. But like the partner statue, you can actually like walk right up to it, and you can like put your hand on Walt's shoulder type of thing. So you get a really up close personal look to it. And something I noticed was down at the base behind Walt and Mickey, like in between where their 2 feet are, Blaine Gibson actually signed this in the casting and says B. Gibson 2001, and then Tag noticed, which was crazy because I have a family connection, that on the other side next to Mickey under his left shoe, it says that it was, I don't even know, SKURJA, whatever, art casting, Prescott, Arizona.
Which is where you have family.
Which is where I have family. Yes, that was where my grandmother lived. That's where my aunt and my cousins live. That's where my mom graduated high school. So deep family connections to Prescott, Arizona.
Just meant to be?
Yep. Pretty crazy. Pretty wild.
So after that, we walked into the Frank G. Wells building, which the upper floors of this have some things like the Marvel Studios is in there. On the first floor is the Walt Disney Archives, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then actually they said on the top floor is where they cut all the trailers and stuff for everything they put out, which I didn't know. I thought that was really cool. We went in. This was probably the busiest inside building of anywhere we went on this tour. It's a very hopping place. And we got to go into the archives itself, into the little entry area, and they have some things on display there. But they also have some tables where archivists meet with people who are trying to get stuff from the archives. And I saw a friend from the Transatlantic Disney Cruise last year, Kevin Kearns, was in there. And I asked him, I said, "Oh, where's your office?" He said, "I'm actually out of Florida usually, but I'm here for this. I'm here doing some work or whatever." And so it was really cool to see him there helping some people on some, we don't know what the project was, but doing something. That was really cool to see that in there as well. And they had Walt's desk from the Hyperion studios that don't exist anymore.
That was pretty incredible. Another part of this experience is you do get to hold one of Walt's many awards, but this one in particular that you actually get to hold and take a picture with was an Oscar from his True Life Adventure series.
Yeah, I think so.
Which that was incredible. Never did I think I'd be able to touch and hold an Oscar. They're heavy.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Have you seen like Oscars where people get up to do the speech? They're like, "This is heavy." Like everybody kind of comments on that, and I was like, "Well, it's whatever." But no, when she handed it to me to hold, I was like, "Oh!" Like it seems like almost impossibly heavy for how big it is, but really cool. So we got to take some photos with that. That was awesome.
Then to kind of round out the tour, we just did kind of like a grand circle tour, if you will, of the studio lot. We got to walk through the ink and paint building. Again, it is occupied by, I think, 20th Century Fox, but they had a really nice hallway with all sorts of displays that kind of talked about the ink and painting process. Again, as we were outside of that building, we got to peek into the offices of the current ink and paint department and watched someone work. There
was also the Lucasfilm offices. There was one of two places on the whole tour that they said you couldn't take photos. So you couldn't take photos of Lucasfilm, and in the animation department there was like a directory listing of offices, and those were like the only two things we couldn't take pictures of. Yep. But it's cool that Lucasfilm has like a little mini office. The building that Lucasfilm was in, that like little bungalow, they were talking about what things that building had been used for. I think it was, I don't know for sure. She didn't use this terminology, but what she was describing to me, I think it was like the model shop, because she was talking about how like the Small World dolls were done up in there. I'm trying to remember what other things she listed, but like I'm kind of wondering if it was that space. That felt right. That they used to refer, that they referred to as the model shop, but which was cool because it was like just across the way from where Walt's office was. So no wonder he would poke his head in very often, imagining down the road. But so I'm wondering if that was the model shop. And then further down, we passed what she referred to as the literal Walt Disney Vault. The Motion Picture Film Archive. Which they said is not every film that they have, because old film was the type of film, do you remember what? I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's the old nitrate, I think, was the old film stock. And they say it's very flammable. So they have that somewhere else. It's in, she said, like in a salt mine, I think. A salt mine, because it's cool and the humidity and everything is perfect. But everything that's in like more contemporary film and stuff is in this spot on the lot, which is really cool. Also, right across from this is the water tower. Yeah. Which, what did we learn about the water tower that was super fascinating? Oh, that Roy, of all people, Roy thought that it would look quite spiffy
if they, instead of having a 4-legged water tower, they opted to do 6. He thought it would have a more elegant look to it. So Roy spent, I don't remember, was it $2,000 or $3,000?
It was like $3,000
extra dollars. Which again, Roy was the one that was always trying to rein Walton. Like, we don't need to spend money there. Like, he was trying to, right? He was the money man. He was the one that was trying to make sure that they would have enough to do the next thing. So it was Roy that decided, yes, let's do 6 legs because it would look much nicer and more elegant, and it's worth the money to make it look better.
It's so funny to me because it's like, of all things, legs of a water tower was the thing he wanted to splurge on or whatever.
He was not happy that Walt went behind his back to do the gold on the castle here that we're now sitting in front of.
Let's add some legs to a water tower.
Extra legs on a water tower, worth it.
The other thing about the water tower that I didn't know and thought was interesting was they don't use it for water anymore.
No.
But it was used for the air conditioning system and like the plumbing.
Yeah.
But the air conditioning I thought was interesting. I would not have thought about that.
And then, as any good Walt Disney attraction does, we exited at the gift shop. So again, Teg kind of talked about what the different spaces were. So it was 2 different stores. The first store was more kind of like a Disney store. The studio store is one of the last remaining physical Disney stores. So it had a lot of kind of, I don't want to say generic items, but items that you could find either on DisneyStore.com, in the parks, that sort of stuff. But there was a section up in the front that was studio specific that you could only buy at that location. Yeah. The other really neat space was the employee store, which was a separate store, same building, back corner, and that had, it was all limited run stuff he was telling us, and stuff that was very, very unique to the studio, even to the point that you may come back in a month as an employee and look for the thing and it may be sold out because it's limited run stuff and they kind of swap it out pretty frequently to keep it fresh. So that was really cool. Yeah. So the fact that we got to shop in both of those spaces and spend lots and lots of money was awesome.
Yeah. One of the coolest things for me was we were waiting to buy something in that employee section, and the employees, so first of all, this counter where you check out had a dry cleaning shop, which was kind of cool. Yeah. But also, while I was standing there purchasing stuff and everything, we had people come up and ask for new name tags. We had people come up and there was new hires that came in and got their badges. There was somebody who was asking for their main entrance pass they were picking up. So I'm like, this is so cool. Yeah, we got to be in we don't work for Disney, but it's so cool that we were kind of there where that part happens, at least for the studio people.
Kind of like a day in life behind the scenes, little sneak peek.
I want to talk really quickly about something that most people probably don't care about, but I thought was really a cute thing that happened. Can we talk about the squirrel?
Yeah. No, all of not just the one squirrel. The squirrels on the Disney lot, I was joking. I'm like, these are the happiest squirrels on earth because they were loving life. They were running around chasing each other like crazy. They were making all sorts of chittery, happy noises, all this stuff, until we noticed there was one squirrel that wasn't having its happiest day. And he basically, we think the cast member saw him on the blacktop, splayed out, not looking so hot.
They thought that it was not alive anymore.
Yeah.
But they went over and it was alive. And so they brought him over, they wrapped him in a towel, a cool towel, because it was a little warm out. They put him on the grass. They brought out a box with some food and some water. Yeah. And by the time we got done with our tour, he was moving around.
He was up and moving around. And he wasn't 100%, but man, he was doing a lot better than when we left.
The squirrels are definitely part of the studio too, because 100%. There was a pin. I didn't buy it because it was like a mystery pin set, and who knows if I would have gotten it. But it was Chip and Dale that said, "Please don't feed the squirrels."
There was even little signs around that said, "Please don't feed the squirrels." Which but
they made a pin. Come on.
Those squirrels. They were like the Disneyland ducks. They did not care that there were people around. No. They were just living their best squirrel lives. Tag was laughing at me because I just was so enamored with the squirrels.
Yes, you were.
It was like my pre-show entertainment before we started the tour.
But there was one at the end that I really enjoyed it because I looked over and we thought another one had passed out because it was a curb with a gutter and stuff. And I looked over and its 2 front paws were hung over the edge of the curb and it was just laying there sprawled out. It left. It was just, I think it was just chilling.
It was just chilling. It's like dogs. We call it when dogs just kind of full belly on the ground, a sploot. The squirrel was splooting, but also hanging off the edge of the sidewalk, the gutter thing. Yeah. It was so funny, so cute.
I'm sorry. I just was passing my photo when I was looking for the squirrel that splooted. One other thing that we saw that I don't think Teresa mentioned was they had a bunch of benches
Oh, yeah.
from 20th Century Fox that were used on the Titanic. I mean, not the real Titanic, but for the movie Titanic, let's just be clear, that they just brought over. They're like, yeah, these came over from Fox. They're all just kind of
Tons of
here,
benches.
and people could just sit on them.
Yeah. There was one that had a little plaque, but then the rest of them just looked like, normal benches. The only thing that was a little off about it was I was like, why are there so many benches over here? It's because they needed to stay together because they survived Titanic together, I guess.
Which is so cool.
I guess you just never know what you may find on the studio lot.
So like Teresa said earlier, if you are a D23 member, or if you're not a D23 member, you should consider becoming a D23 member. But keep an eye out for these things because they have tours frequently on the lot this month. I think they still have a few dates. I don't know what ticket availability, but there were some other dates. So if you're interested in doing that, also the archives those things come up.
The other thing too, so you're probably thinking, oh, it was a tour group. There was only 8 people on this tour. So it was a very intimate, very relaxed, very awesome tour that you had ample opportunities to take photos of stuff, and it was just really, really cool. Lots of opportunities to ask any questions you may have. You will not be on a tour with a lot of people because the places you go are not meant for more than 8 people. Yeah, I think that's
Walt's
probably
office, that's all you could fit in there at a time. So it's definitely worth it, whatever price. If being in the presence of Walt's stuff and learning more about the company and being in that space is worth it, is important to you,
This tour
This
was
is a great tour, a
Yeah.
priceless tour. It's really, really amazing. Our tour guide was amazing. All the cast members that we interacted with on the lot, the lady with the squirrel, and our check-in person, and the people in the stores, just amazing. Just like the premium Disney experience.
Yes,
is awesome.
for sure.
Well, Weekly Tiers, if you are a supporter at the cast member level or above, we're having our monthly hangout this Sunday at 4 p.m. Disneyland time. And if you are not a supporter but would like to interact with us, we are having our public live stream on YouTube. You can head on over to youtube.com/DLWeekly, and starting at 5:30 Disneyland time, we'll be out there, and we're going to be talking about our merchandise haul from this last trip.
We are. It's cool. So if you have any questions about the 70th, or you're curious about what we purchased and filled an entire suitcase that was empty when we entered California, but was not when we were leaving.
No.
Curious to see what all we brought home. We have quite the merch haul for you, but we're also more than happy to answer any questions you all have about either the parades, the fireworks, the activities. I'm sure Tag is going to be very excited to talk about his Disneyland key and key experience, the key to Disneyland. So if you have any questions or just curious about what kind of merch we got, we hope to see you on Sunday.
It's okay. I'll be the only weekly tier without an answer. Make sure you send your questions to Producer James or Producer Vern at trivia@DLWeekly.net.
Welcome back to Trivia Land, where we're going to find out the answers to tonight's questions, see how Tag and Teresa did, and find out how you did listening at home.
Probably better than us.
You know, I feel that you did... Okay, no, it wasn't your best night.
Oh, no. You can't even be nice about
Although
it.
I had to look close at your answers and then compare
It's like,
to
oh, that's
the
right.
computer.
They got nothing correct.
Well, let's see. We'll find out.
You've had better nights. Let's get right to it. Your first question from listener Ryan J. How many feet of rail line were in Walt's Carrollwood Pacific Railroad?
Well, apparently not 1,200 or 3,000.
Yes, Tag said there were 3,000, and Teresa said 1,200. The correct answer that I was looking for was 2,600, just shy of a half mile.
So,
Well, with Price is Right rules, you won that one. Closest without going over.
There you go.
Your second listener submitted question from listener Jessica M. DCA's Animation Building has a most glorious display of all our favorite Disney classics. What is the order of sequence for these wondrous displays? Name the films. You didn't give them to me in order.
No, we knew that.
But you gave me a bunch of names, including Incredibles, Encanto, Toy Story, Coco, Bambi, Frozen, Pinocchio, Moana, Frozen twice, Tangled, Cars, Lion King, Lilo and Stitch. Did I miss any?
Oh, were you talking about ours?
The ones that you gave me, yes.
Oh, no. I'm just curious what the right answers are.
All right. So this was a hard one to verify and to find things, and I did the best I could based on TikTok videos and other influencer things that were out there.
Wait. How do you know what the order is? It's not like there's a now presenting and then it starts.
Like I said, I did the best I could from things that influencers had put out there. So, if any listener knows that I found something wrong or that I say something out of order, mea culpa, maximum mea culpa, did the best I could. Snow White, Cinderella, Bambi, Pinocchio, Toy Story, Lilo and Stitch, Cars, Incredibles, Finding Nemo, Frozen, Moana, Soul, Zootopia, Princess and the Frog, Encanto, and Coco.
Zootopia is another one we missed.
And Soul. Was Moana not in there?
Moana's in there.
Okay.
Between Frozen and Soul.
And you said Cinderella.
Mm-hmm.
So no Peter Pan.
Not that I saw in the current
That's fine.
edition.
Lilo and Stitch. You said Finding Nemo, right?
Yes.
You said Tangled. You said Frozen?
Yes.
Lion King, you said.
Yes.
Incredibles, right?
Yes.
Pinocchio.
Yes.
Toy Story.
Yes.
Coco, Bambi, and Encanto.
Yes.
We didn't do too bad then.
No,
The only
you
extra
did
one we
very
had was
well.
Peter Pan.
Look at that. Yes.
So Soul and Zootopia are two that I remember. Oh, and Snow White.
Yeah, Snow White.
Yep.
All right. Admirable for
Not bad.
what we did do, yeah.
Your third listener submitted question from listener Donna S. What is the omnibus chassis made from?
Yeah.
Tag said from a school bus. Teresa said from a pickup truck. The correct answer that I was looking for was a beer truck.
Oh.
That's fun. Which was a pickup truck. No, I'm just kidding.
Nah, built with a heavier suspension.
Nice.
Yep.
It was a joke.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I had to go pedantic. And your fourth and final regular round question from listener Jill M. How much is a local call from the phone booth in Metropolis?
Oh, yeah.
Tag said 13 cents or whatever it is they use there.
Yep.
And Teresa said stumped. The correct answer that I was looking for was 35 cents.
Oh. Such a good opportunity for some punny
That was
something.
the trick. That
Yeah.
was the trick.
That's
But
where
also
they
35
get you.
cents is kind of a unique. Dang, we really didn't do that well. Our saving grace was the movie lineup.
Well, we're not even done yet.
I know.
And your bonus question from listener Evan. Disneyland is a place that houses what kind of animals? And you said there are cats and ducks and horses and geese and hummingbirds, and the only answer that we were looking for was we wanted to know about the Disneyland cats.
Oh. Well, we went above and beyond.
Yes. You were over helpful and over providing, you done did good. That's what you did on that.
Hey, that's the only one we
We
got right.
overachieved.
Overachievers, that's what I wanted, yes. Well, listeners, how did you do listening at home? How do you think Tag and Teresa did? Do you have that perfect question that's going to really stump them next time? Well, now that we've fixed our screw up with the technology, we will definitely be able to get that question and ask it on a future episode. So feel free to send that in to us at dlweekly.net/trivia.
Well, we will be back next week with more Disneyland news and information.
Until then, go out and enjoy the parks.
And a special thank you to Sidel for editing the podcast.
And just a weird note, when we were recording in the park, us remembering this tagline was a lot more difficult than it should have been.
It was.
Hello, I am Baymax, your personal podcast companion. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this episode? My scans indicate you have been a good weekly tier. Have a lollipop. Now excuse me while I let out some air. Goodbye.